Saturday, March 16th, and I'm going to call this special city council meeting to order. Would the city secretary please call the roll?
Mitchell.
Here.
Rizzo.
Present.
Heiser.
Here.
Zuniga. Harris.
Here.
Parsley. Here. Tobias.
Here. All right, 6 members present. We have a quorum. Next up is citizen comments period. At this time, we ask anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak to please do so. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and that you direct those comments to the mayor and council. We also ask that you fill out a citizen comments form and submit that to either myself or the city secretary. I have 4 who have registered to speak. First up is Ms. Lila Knight. Coming to speak off the record.
Exactly. I probably should. Why do you always call me first?
Because you're the first one that
Get it over
submits,
with.
you go to the
Oh.
bottom of the stack and it gets flipped.
Good morning. I have just a very general comment on item number 2, which I believe also applies to item number 1. But I will be sending you a dissertation length email next week.
Can we get it a little bit louder on the microphone, or the microphone closer to your mouth, one? Please, thank you.
My name is Lila Knight. My first concern is that it's very difficult, to make a 3-minute comment. There are very few of the people on the council who can hold their comments on the dais to 3 minutes. But it's particularly difficult when the backup packet with all of the details are only provided to the citizenry the day before the meeting. We all live very busy lives, and it's difficult enough to respond when we have 72 hours notice. I'm not sure when y'all received the backup packet, but it was probably earlier than yesterday. I believe that it's important in a democracy to have an informed citizenry. That's very important. And when we don't get proper notice of what exactly the discussion is going to be, that makes it very, very difficult for your citizens to be informed and to respond. So I'm hoping that in the future you'll do better, particularly when you see how many people showed up today. There are people who are interested, but they were not well informed. Secondly, specifically with item number 2, the agenda item is very broad, which they generally are, but without the backup, we didn't really know what it was about. But it says potential options to develop downtown. I thought we were revitalizing downtown. And words have meaning. So it'll be interesting to see the direction you're taking going forward. Are you going to totally destroy all of downtown and redevelop it? Or are we going to revitalize it? Thank you.
Okay, next up is Miss Betty Conley.
Betty, make sure the mic is working. I've had difficulty hearing.
Well, I usually don't need a mic, but that's fine. Can you hear that?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Betty Conley. I'm the president of the CAS Senior Center. I'm very nervous again. I'm coming to you about the CAS Senior Center and your intentions of how you're going to help us. I just wanted to state that the senior centers are recognized by the Older American Act as a community focal point. It said, as we meet to prepare and discuss our city's growth and future, I'm here once again to mention to the city leaders the needs of those of over 50, who devise 22.22% of the city's population. By supporting your seniors, you are also supporting the younger and middle-aged residents who are trying to figure out how to take care of their parents and grandparents. You're giving the seniors a sense of community and purpose. By providing a kitchen, you will be allowing us to feed more residents, interact with the youth, and help make our city a blue zone, which scientifically has been shown to increase the quality and longevity of life. Mr. Langley is aware of the benefits of a true senior center as he has managed cities that have been built and managed them. They are individual buildings, not shared space, that holds 200 plus and includes recreation, game, and meeting rooms with seniors who will use them for social and educational and welfare needs. Thank you.
Next up, Yvonne Flores-Kale.
All right, good morning, members of council. For the record, my name is Yvonne Flores-Kale. I'm a resident and a past council member of the city of Kyle. I'm here today to voice my concern regarding comments made by members of the council during a previous council meeting. Our city's leadership, starting from the council down to the assistant city managers, should embrace and encourage resident participation. Hearing phrases such as, "we shouldn't listen to the minority," and "if we table this issue, more people will come out to speak up next time," are not only contradictory to the oath each elected official took, but they are also oppressive and repressive, and not all spoken like a true leader. Let me state for the record, when the phrase, "we shouldn't listen to the minority," was spoken, it was spoken to only those who showed up to speak out, in fact, making them the majority. And when there is a spoken fear that residents will come and speak out, that tells me that our leadership has no interest in hearing what we as residents have to say. This type of mentality and verbiage is the reason many residents do not vote. Residents should never be punished for taking time out of their day to come and speak at any meeting. As the great Kobe Bryant once stated, being a leader is hard, and you will often not be liked. It is not all kumbaya. Moving forward, I hope this council will openly show more support for the active residents in our community, not only by hosting coffee hours, but also by speaking up when the ones sitting next to you stray from their responsibilities. Thank you for your time.
All right, next up is Miss Cynthia Bentley.
Good morning. My name is Cynthia Bentley. I'm a citizen here at 350 Paddington Drive in Kyle, Texas. I'm here to speak on the topic of the Senior Center being a social committee. The Central Texas area is the second largest, fastest growing area in the nation for adults 65 years and older. Some of the things that we do at our Senior Center here in Kyle, Texas, we address many things other than just social. One of the things that we have is a lot of classes on meals and nutritional programs. We bring in speakers to educate our seniors what they need to eat at this particular time in their lives. What we ate when we were 20 years old is not acceptable when you're at our age. So we educate. Information and assistance. We give them information on the various items that's going on in the city in order to get them out of the houses, in order to do things so they won't go through depression. And depression for people our age is very, very vital to overcome. Health, fitness, and wellness programs. We have all of those programs in order to make sure our seniors are exercising. Fitness, we have the volleyball, indoor volleyball, to get them moving. Public benefits and counseling. One of the things that we seniors are experiencing at this time is grief. Grief of loved ones being lost, our spouse, our partners, our children. We have grief workshops in order to help us get over those things. Volunteer and civic engagement opportunities. Now that is a no-brainer. We put in many, many hours of volunteering here at City Hall, giving directions, and we have put in thousands of hours saving the city quite a few thousands of dollars. And this is only one of the things that we do as far as volunteering. Volunteering, we have given many hours with AMVET, the VFW, the Kyle Butte Kiwanis, Unforgettable Families and Friends. We raise funds for school supplies, Christmas toys. We give out tennis shoes, socks. We volunteer putting food in various little food boxes across the city of Kyle. So we do quite a few things. We are not a social club. This is just a tip of the iceberg that we do. We have workshops in order to educate our seniors in real estate, should we stay in our homes, and of course IT. IT is very important. We are victims of identity fraud. We educate our seniors on things like this. So we are not a social club. We want you to know that we are a vital part of this community. We are putting in many, many hours of volunteer service to save the city of Kyle many dollars. Thank you.
All right, that is all the citizen comments forms that I have. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward and speak? And please state your name for the record.
I'm Pam Gibson. I'm a resident here in Kyle. I've been here for 7 years. I'm the general manager of CAS. I don't know you. I don't know your family dynamics. I don't know where all of your relatives live, but I can guarantee you have parents. And whether they are here locally or not, if they've ever lost someone, they're lost. They really need a senior center where they know they can go and they can have comfort and they can have friendship and they can begin to live again. It's hard because especially if your parent is with you, you don't notice these things. They say, I'm fine, I'm fine. They may not be fine. They need somewhere to go. We appreciate the fact that we have a building, but it's too small. We'd like to be able to give more meals than we do. We'd like to have more events than we do. We would like to have rooms where we can have different projects happening at different times. That can only happen if we have a bigger space and more logistically sound. If you do see that this is an important thing, our community will look at you as loyal, trustworthy, caring, and loving people. We need this in our community for our elderly. I know that we have a younger group here now, but you will all be seniors one day, and you will want someplace where you can go and join and feel like you belong. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close citizen comments. Citizen comments is now closed. All right, next up is agenda item number 1, reports and presentation. Receive a report, hold a discussion, provide staff direction regarding the potential construction of a multi-purpose community center. I thought maybe before you go, I could give just a little bit of some background and context for what we're here. So I appreciate everyone coming this morning. I don't know that we were expecting the crowd, but it's always welcome, especially when the folks who are coming to engage on the topic that matters, that's got us all out of bed this morning, to come here. We're here for the purpose that you're here, to try to figure out how best to handle a community center proposal. There's lots of different ways to do it. If you go back to 2016, really, and before, the seniors were active and engaged there, although maybe not in quite the same numbers. But we heard loud and clear all the way back then that a senior center was something that was really important, which is why, given our limited resources at the time, we pretty much vacated our Krug Activity Center in order to make room for the seniors. And then, of course, that comes at a cost, right? Because that facility can be used for lots of purposes that benefit the community, but the council at the time chose to prioritize, in as much as we felt like logistically we could, allowing for the seniors to use the Krug Activity Center. All of that as a means to help produce a more permanent solution, not only for the seniors, but for other needs that we have. That has taken some time because in 2020, as I've mentioned to the group before, rather than going to try to use our limited resources to construct a community center or a senior center, we felt like the priority needed to be our roads. And so we took forward in 2020, the priority was the police. You know, it's actually kind of ironic because whenever you do polling, you know, through our citizen polling discussion that we do every year, we send out feedback. The polling would suggest that in terms of what the public, the majority, the voting public was interested in, a new police station was almost at the very last, right next to Senior Center. So that's the bad side, the dark side of this, because the populace at large doesn't necessarily want to invest in things that don't directly benefit them. So we had to get real serious about figuring out what is the best way to set up for a bond to allow for the police to have the facilities that they need. And it took time. We even waited an entire year while the police department was saying exactly the same thing. We're in space too small. We're a vital part of the community. We need to have resources invested into us organizationally so that we can achieve our purpose. So we were finally able to do that. And then fast forward 2 years to 2022, it's like, all right, well, now maybe the time is right for us to pursue a senior center or a community center. But the truth is it wasn't, because our roads were continuing to deteriorate, and we needed to focus on getting the resources together to bring about redevelopment of our roads. So the senior center was again put on hold. And that may seem like, oh, you know, that we're not getting the treatment we deserve. But again, the police department had to wait 6-8 years. We have several departments right now that are also saying the same things to us. They need bigger facilities, more space. We also have folks in the community saying that we really need a recreation center, something like the Y, Sportsplex, pretty much across the board, any category that we have to make an investment in a growing city like ours, the argument can be made that there's a need for it. So I don't know, it was about 6 months ago when we really sat down as a council and with the community and started having talk and discussions about, all right, here comes 2024. We're going to have an opportunity to try to make an impact. What is that going to look like for us? How are we going to approach it? And the approach has been, up until this point, to try to do everything we can to get ready to call for a 2024 general election, presidential election, where we're going to have 15,000, 20,000 people getting to come. That's real voters. That's the biggest cross section of the voter base that we can have to actually have the public weigh in. And we want to be ready. And what being ready means is that we have to call a bond by August. And to call a bond by August means we have to have some basic numbers. We have to have some basic designs. We have to identify a location. We have to figure out what components are going to go in this building. And that's a lot to do. So I think it's possible that there could be some elements of this facility that different folks might want us to have exactly figured out before we called the bond in August. But the problem is August is 5 months away. And so in terms of government, that's just a snap of the finger or blink of an eye. It's coming very, very fast. And what we don't want to do is miss the window in August to call a bond, if that is indeed the will of council. Because if you do, then we have to have a special election next May, or we have to push it to an off-year election next November. And in my opinion, based on the experience of seeing the bonds that the entire region has put forward over the last 5, 6, 7 years, that the best chance we have of getting what we want is to call the bond for this November, because the most folks are going to come in, they'll be able to read, process the information, and make a vote based on whether we should move forward or not. So my only plea with the community and with the seniors in particular is to be patient with us, but you also please be adaptable, because we have hard discussions to figure out. We have a lot of different elements, size, scope, and if the conversation is all about, and this is what we talked with the police about when they were wanting to move forward. It's like, let's find a way to have the problems that we have come together and create a better solution than if any one problem was solved on its own at the exclusion of others. So there are other elements outside of a senior center, I think, that are really important for us to try to make an impact and to deliver to the community. But I don't think at any point that it should be at the exclusion of a senior center, if that makes sense. The senior center needs to be a part of the solution. It's just not the only part. So with that, let's see if we can make some headway, have a public discussion. Mr. Elizondo.
Thank you, Mayor. You just made my job a lot easier on this presentation. The background history, I think you spoke better than I could. I just went back to the 2023 Visioning Workshop.
Thank you, Marco. I'll start over. No, kidding. Oh, yeah, sorry. Next slide, Grant. As well as our award-winning public safety center. Everything that we're building in Kyle is premier, and so the whatever it is, the purpose is greater engagement and quality of life for our residents. I've put some award-winning multi-purpose facilities on these slides just for reference. That one's in Frisco. The next slide. So because this is an informal discussion with council, I figured we'd do this a little bit differently rather than me go through the whole presentation. We're really looking for three main things, Mayor, that you outlined very well. The facility use, how is it going to be used, what's going to be in it, try and narrow down that scope to exactly what we're looking at. We won't get into the actual square footage or how much we could have provided a breakdown of a recreation center is generally this big or an aquatic center is generally that big, but we don't necessarily need that direction today. We really just need the direction of what will this facility be used for? What's the scope of this facility? The facility that we're looking at is probably going to be somewhere between 60, 70,000 square feet, between that and 100, 120, 130,000 square feet, depending on how much is in there. But we're not going to get into the specifics of that today. That's for future next steps. Additionally, we'll talk about funding and timeline, and then we'll talk about location. But before we jump to those, Grant, you can go back and just stay on the facility use. Thanks. I figured we would take these one at a time. So we'd introduce the facility use. Conceptually, what's the facilities plan uses? Here's some of the things that we've heard. It doesn't have to be these things. It can be other things. And then I would open it up to council discussion, and once we feel we've gotten good direction and consensus on this, we'll move on to funding and timeline. What do you guys think about that approach? Would you rather me hit them all and come back? Good? Okay.
So I would say historically, I think the conversation regarding this facility is three components: senior center, activity center, or / rec center, and a library annex or a library extension. Does anyone have comments on those three?
I mean, I have plenty. Are we ready for it?
Let's go.
Putting her hair up. Uh-oh, putting her hair up.
Oh, boy.
Here we go.
Okay. So I think a lot of the points that we need to focus on already been discussed, but I think that the focus needs to be a purpose-driven design to think what we're lacking. I know that we have talked about the library component, and I don't think it needs to be that we're going to relocate the current library, but maybe having an expansion on the east side. So that would be something definitely that I would like to see on the senior center. Next would be to have multi-use space, like planning for flexible areas, just like we currently have in our public safety center, anticipating technological changes and allow for spaces to be available for rent for meetings or conferences. We know that a lot of people are currently working from home, and I don't think that that's gonna go down anytime soon. So I would like to have this sign that also has expansion capabilities, so the more we grow, if we wanna keep adding to it, that we have that opportunity. Definitely to have a senior component, but I also would like to see a youth component. I would like to see if we can get kayak involved and see what are we lacking that our youth is in need, what is something they would like to see in this facility. Parks should definitely be involved because I know they have a lot of programs and lack of space. So since we're gonna be having fitness center, maybe potential for aquatics room, then I would like to know what is our Parks Department currently lacking, because I know they do a lot of programs, not to take the space from the seniors to do it, but so that we have different spaces for everybody. Next, I do know also that we don't currently have an indoor basketball court, because Parks has even asked my school for the rental of the facility, so that should definitely be something that we consider. Next, basketball courts. Another thing that I feel like it will be really important is to have a public display places, potential for exhibitions. And I don't know if we wanted to get our school or HCISD involved into this. I am crazy about museums, and although I would like to have like a National History Museum in here, I know that's probably not gonna be something we will get, but at least having a room for exhibitions, whether it's from a school or from any company to come and have some work display, artistic displays, that would be something I would like to see. Next, I don't know if it's possible, but there is a huge lack of places for you to take little children that are indoor. So if we were to be able to have another component that has like a Museum, My Museum kind of floor where you have a play and learn environment, that it's also open for kids that have sensory disabilities, I would like to see that. It's one of the things that I would like to see the most, because I'm glad I have children that are big, but when I was a mom of little ones, I had subscriptions to aquariums, museums, libraries, everything that I could take my kids, and I think we have none of that, with the exception of our library. Coffee shop, food options for sure. Now, when we need to talk, and I don't know that we're gonna talk about budgeting right now, or do I need to wait for that?
You can go for it, feel free.
Well, I don't know what you have already that I don't wanna just be saying something you're gonna talk about later.
We're just talking high level as far as the bond and how much money, but if you wanna dig into it in this discussion, go for it.
I just, when we talk about the budget, what are we including in that? Because I think that maintenance and also the accessibility, like if we're gonna have to be building roads to access the facility, which probably we have to do, knowing how expensive they are, because we just went through the road bond and we know like a mile is like $3-point-something million. Those are things that I wanna make sure that we are including on that. I think that's it.
I would like to address this. Pardon me, I've had laryngitis all week, but it's better now, fortunately, though it doesn't sound that way. I'd like to address the issue related to the senior center. One of the things that I campaigned on was downtown redevelopment and of the senior center. I am a proud member of CAS. I'm pretty much the only gray hair on the council, and feel a great responsibility to the 22% of our citizens that are senior here in Kyle. I attend CAS regularly, and I know the difficulties we are having with our current facility, and I would like for those to be addressed and eliminated when we get the new facility, which we will have a new facility. One of the things that we truly need is a kitchen and an area sufficient to serve at least 200 people. We turn people away on Tuesdays, which is the only day that we are able to provide lunches. We consistently turn people away. For special events, we have to do ticketing, even though they're free, because we only have a limited space. And we traditionally, well, not traditionally, we always turn people away that would love to attend those events. We're just too small by a long shot. Our membership has exploded in the last few years, and the center is absolutely crucial for these people. The kitchen, I think, is an especially important component. Many of our seniors are food insecure, and coming to one luncheon where they have to pay $6 anyway, and maybe paying for transportation as well to get there, for many is a burden. There are federal funds available if we have a kitchen, which will actually be profitable for us. So about $14 per meal is what FEMA is paying right now in USDA. So that would be very reasonable for us to be able to provide meals 5 days a week in our own kitchen. Many senior centers do this. I've got experience with senior centers in Tarrant County. Almost all of them that I had experience with provided 5 days a week meals on a sliding scale or free. One of the things that I'm so concerned with is how Blue Zones was mentioned. I'm a big Blue Zones advocate. I'm also an AARP Livable Communities advocate. And their livability index came out a few months ago, and Kyle is below average, significantly below average on the livability index. And one of the things we were below average on was services to seniors. And I think that that's something that we've neglected long enough. We need to have adequate services. We need to have a space that we are guaranteed is our space. One of the problems we have now is the combined space where we think we've got the space and we don't. Having the seniors not be able to use their facility during spring break camp is a problem. But understand, we don't have the facilities. So this will be a huge benefit to the seniors to have their own facility. I don't really care so much if it's attached or detached or on that campus or a different campus. Personally, what I want to see is that the seniors have control over the environment in the facility and they have adequate space for all of the activities that we do. We're turning away people who want to do free activities for the seniors. We're using the library, we're using every place that we possibly can for senior activities and still turning away. Aging is Cool wants to do more and more activities that are free for the seniors, and we can't find places for them. So this is actually a serious issue for the seniors. This is as our seniors spoke a few minutes ago, I appreciate the participation. We do participate, and I appreciate the eloquence with which they stated the case for the senior center and how much need there is for that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody hear me? Can you hear me? No. Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, we're good.
Can you hear me now? All right.
Please speak into the microphone. I'm having trouble
I am.
hearing everybody. Their faces are too far away from the mic in order to hear properly.
Well, with all respect, if you need to move forward, ma'am, it's right underneath the speaker if you need to hear it on that end. Because it's about as long as can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I've done some research on this, and I don't want to go too far into this, but I understand the role of community centers and why we need them more than ever. Empowering youth, strengthening neighborhoods, providing life-enriching programs for a livable community, okay? They serve as leaders in the community while the pressure of the pandemic declines, years of a society experiencing high mental health, physical illness associated with long-term conditions, and the aging population. So, as we begin our conversations, some key factors I think we should look at is while we're building a mission statement and at the same time develop strategies to include all funding options. Feasible site location and building partnerships within area businesses, county involvement, and school districts. Community centers are a place, of course, to meet and connect, whether it's for fitness or recreation, a place to belong, a place for families, and so forth. They are also must be able to provide and designed to promote a variety of immense usage for a community at large. Now, I know I've been hearing a lot about the seniors, which is true, you deserve that. But we also, as council, have to look at the community at large. Community centers should also be a gathering places for all ages. And they can also, like what Ms. Parsley had said, could be host larger gatherings. I know we've talked about city conferences, events, including summer programmings and camps. That is needed as well. It also provides an area for seniors to have a section that incorporates many types of activities and concessions for meals, which I've heard about, space for a fitness studio, and also for exercising areas for seniors as well. So with the growth in our city reaching almost 60,000 and the idea of the City of Kyle Community Centers population is increasing, We as council have to be responsible. Financing a project this magnitude is vital and important to the taxpayers of our city. However, keeping the future health and wellness of our city should also be at the forefront as well. So with anything, is what I'm hearing is these are all great ideas. These are all great things that we need, especially for the seniors, and we're talking about that. But just like anything else, and what I've actually had a conversation with and with my family is, there's always going to be a dollar attached to this. Funding is going to be the major issue with anything, whether it's a new car, whether it's providing for services, because this would also have to be a budgeted item later on down the road with the seniors. And I think I've had a conversation with Ms. Conley before about funding whenever, if it's you had your own facility, what happens when the water heater goes out? Who provides those fundings? Whenever the taxes need to be paid, who provides those? So I think what we should first, in my opinion, focus on is the site location. The reason why we should focus first on the site location is because that's going to depend on the square footage, the funding for any kind of infrastructure improvements like Ms. Parsley was saying, the roads, anything that can be able to be more accessible and more easier. I know we had brought up something before over there off of Daisy, and people may have looked at it, but it was not feasible as far as the traffic flow and so forth. Also bringing forth the numbers. We got to see the numbers. Where are we at? We just got finished doing the bond, correct? About 2 years ago for the road bond. I would be very interested to see where our money is on that end. Because again, if we bring this forward to a bond, that's going to be a possible tax increase. And for seniors who are also living on a very limited budget, guess what? That would also be a tax increase on your end as well. So we have to be responsible and look at and see where the numbers lie. I would like to see where that's at. These are all great things that I would like to see for the city and for our seniors, and also for the summer camps, because they are desperately needing space for camps and other stuff. Indoor basketball, conference rooms. We already have a task force in place for a sportsplex, so you have that project going forward. But I would like to see what we should do first. The number one thing is to decide on a site location, because I think we've discussed that before. It was at Tobias, and we came back and said that land was at a no use anyways, and we had to start all over again.
You're talking about the old lake? What was
Yes,
that called?
exactly.
Right,
So,
Lineberger.
yeah, so I think starting on the conversation, we can talk about like I said, the structure, the concept, the design, combining or not combining a senior citizen with the general population rec center. I think narrowing down the site location could really help us first to see what side, if it's east, west, probably east side, what area, where's the infrastructure, and also where the dollars are at, to see if we can actually build something that large and go from there.
You're all over it. You're all over it. So I'm sure there's a slide presentation talking about the debt structure and all of that. Let's summarize it in one sentence. We originally took out in 2022 a $294 million bond with the expectation that our max tax rate would be 59 cents. The assumptions were that the growth in the city would be moderate. We've exceeded that. So I think staff and what's in the presentation is going to say that as long as we're still willing to go to the 59, not more, then we ought to be able to do around a $75 million bond. So I think that's, as long as conceptually you're willing to say the original number that the voters approved of a potential max tax rate of 59 cents is still something that we think is a reasonable number, we should be able to get roughly 70 to 75 million put in. And then there's really only two locations, which I think are also in the outline. One is Cal Vista Park by Chapa. They're both in your district. One is Cal Vista Park by Chapa, and then the other is the contract, which we don't actually own yet, but we now are officially in contract on the 80 acres next to Lake Kensington, or whatever we'd call it, right next to Kensington, right next to Seton. So there are challenges with both, but I think both sites are 20 plus acres. So I think we would have enough space to do whatever we want.
And I think we've been really focusing in that area. And I want to thank the county and everybody on council for the support for BB and Daisy.
Yeah.
And also 2 years ago, finding the funding to put those sidewalks in front of Chapa, because we knew if I had a crystal ball, we would be having this discussion.
So let's
it's just trying to find the actual, if we can identify the location.
So let's put it
And so
to
forth.
a general discussion. Do we have a preference between, because they're both on Daisy, or is there a third option that somebody wants us to consider for a location? Do we have a preference between the lake property that we're under contract to purchase or Kyle Vista Park, which we already own, which is dedicated as parkland? And so I'm not sure if there are legal ramifications to that one, but Councilmember Heiser.
Well, I'm not really ready to weigh in yet on that question. And I
so
don't
you
think
weren't-
that we should until we conceptually, I could be talked out of this, but I feel like we're putting the chicken before the egg, trying to identify a location before we have any semblance of an idea of what we're going to put on the property. We don't know the space.
Let's just say that we have to make both decisions. And
We do. But just in regard to the seniors who are here and a large part of our community, this is something I've brought up before, and we're still not really having the right conversation, I don't think. And the seniors are not a city entity. And so to have a conversation in good faith about where a senior center falls in the city's list of priorities, I think is going to fall flat here. I think the question that we need to answer in seniors that you should be putting to us is, do you want to be a city entity, which would make us more responsible for investing more money into building you a standalone facility that you want? Because otherwise, the conversation we're going to have is, yes, we want to provide space for you in a facility, but it might not be exactly what you're wanting. And I see you guys shaking your heads. I would challenge you to go to the community at large and ask if residents would rather have a large investment in roads, in infrastructure, or a standalone senior center. And I think what the mayor was saying earlier, you're going to find that you won't like the answer. So I'm sitting here looking at you guys, asking you, saying to you that I want to give you what you want and what you deserve. But the structure of the relationship between CAS and the city would need to change in order for this governing body here to possibly look at this differently in terms of the list of priorities. And I don't know if you guys are going to villainize me for saying this, but I've said it to a group of you before, and some of the folks in the room didn't know that CAS wasn't a part of the city, and didn't know that the current agreement that y'all have with the city, that you get that space for free. And so there are dynamics, I think, that need to be addressed in this relationship so that we can move forward in good faith to try to deliver on the many promises that have been made to you over the years. So that's the one thing. In terms of a rec center, obviously we have identified needs. To Ms. Parsley's point earlier, our Parks Department has searched far and wide for space for youth programs, indoor youth programs, and we don't have it. We have conducted feasibility studies for athletic programs in our city, and basketball and volleyball were two of the sports that populated highest on the list of needs. So I think those are things as we grow and grow and grow, and we want to provide more both outdoor and indoor opportunities for our residents, that it's absolutely something that we need to be looking at. And those spaces are also multi-use. So I think that that's going to be really important for us to be able to hold a variety of events. In the library, I talked about the need for a library on the east side, and I stand by that today, and I think it's a significant need for us to have a dedicated space in this new facility. that serves as a library and also has free internet access. So, of the three things that we laid out, those were the three, right? Senior center, rec center, library. We didn't talk about anything else.
Well, the
right?
question was which spot is.
Well, I know, but I'll get there. I'll get there after everyone else.
I just wanted to address that. The question you were asking is like, where do we think it would be the best location for this?
And so think about the rec center component. So we have a lot of different projects we're pursuing. One of the projects is a senior center. One of them is expansion of our sports facilities, which we've already acknowledged is needed. But we currently have two with the possibility of three different viable sites and some funding for sports-related infrastructure. We have the brick and mortar district where we have some funding. We're looking at a project with the county on the east side, the NHO fields. Black Star has reached out saying they'd like to potentially share. We've had conversations that are privileged at this point, but there are indoor facilities with external operators, which kind of goes against the argument of, where we could potentially do some indoor projects. But the thing about it is, if we say, oh, we're not going to put indoor rec facilities at this location because we're working on a deal potentially with someone else, if that deal falls through and we didn't pursue this sportsplex, we could find ourselves in a position where we didn't solve the indoor, basketball, volleyball problem that we have. Because just like the seniors have space needs and feel like they're being underserved, our kids are being underserved majorly. We have no sports infrastructure in our city of 60,000 people, and so our kids don't have things to do either. So it's like, how do we find a way to take these problems and try to solve them? We got one shot at this. What can we do to maximize the impact that we have on the community through a 2024 bond?
So to your question of like where the location should be, I think a central point would be the best. Number two, something that has the opportunity for the center to be expanded. I think those two things are important when we are picking the location, the accessibility, the expansion capabilities, and that it's a centralized point for the entire city of Kyle. So I don't know if we own, I know we're considering two pieces of land, but that does not mean that we have to make that decision today, because we don't know a year from now if opportunity comes that we have, chances to acquire different land that will serve better for the purpose.
Okay, so.
Council members, I just want to, sorry to interrupt. This was probably a poor decision on my part to go through these one by one. Councilmember Tobias, you're exactly right, and the way that you outlined and thought about it is what we are walking through here. Staff's thought was, these are the elements we need, and it's exactly what you outlined. What is the use? How are we going to pay for it? How much are we going to pay? How does it affect the tax rate? And where is it going to be? These are the three things that staff needs to then go on to the next steps of looking at. Even the property discussion isn't even we need to know the exact property. It's just some idea of where it is, so that staff can then take and run with conceptual designs and renderings and funding updates and the project scope and dig a little deeper to bring that back to council. So that I probably should have walked through all those and then came back. Your thought process was exactly where we were at. We just stopped on use for the discussion and then would have moved on. If you all would like, I could hit the next two and then just have the full discussion, or the mayor outlined it.
We're good. We're almost
Okay,
there.
all right,
The
all right.
conversation's good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely. And I haven't weighed in yet, so we're going to weigh in. Okay, all right, cool. Just really quickly, just to piggyback on a lot of what the other council members said. One of the things I've noticed just in my time in Kyle is that we definitely need to invest and do better. And that means investing in our seniors, investing in our kids, investing in the community. So first of all, we start off with a senior center. One of the things that I've really noticed is that when we do events there, they are lacking space. Being part of the Knights of Columbus, we do a yearly Thanksgiving luncheon for them, and it kills me when we have to turn people away. That's something I don't like to do. Lately we've gone to go orders, and that's not exactly where I want to be at. But at least we're getting everyone served right. To go orders, we make enough for to go orders, but having a space that can accommodate enough the growing seniors, making sure we have a kitchen, because right now we'll cook everything at the church kitchen and then transfer it over, but they don't have that opportunity for all their events as well. So having the kitchen is really, really important. That's a good space that is needed and warranted. The size is something we can discuss with seniors and we can start talking about. The second thing is having a library. A library is super important. Libraries are safe spaces. Libraries are a place where people come out and they bring their kids, they educate them. We have people in our community don't have internet, don't have computers. This is a place where they can come out and get training as well. There's so much that our libraries offer us that they're so important in our communities. They're safe spaces. That's the biggest thing I can say about a library, and it is needed. We've outgrown ours. Our library was established for a wing, and now that's back when we were 5,000 residents. It's over 60,000 residents and still operating out of the same library, so we need to do better. The third thing is our community center. I know that there's been talk about maybe what are the different options. People have even thrown out the option of a YMCA. Unfortunately, the YMCA only serves a portion of your society, of your residents. We have a lot of communities that are economically not able to buy a membership or anything like that. So it's important to make sure that we serve the entire community, not just a few. That's something that I really want to make sure that we know, is that we want to serve the entire community, especially those that are underserved. These are kids that don't always have a chance, and I want to make sure that we're giving them that chance. We're giving them a chance to run, play, be a part of a team, and with the programming that I know that's in the future for Kyle, through our wonderful Parks Department, we can give them that opportunity. So making sure that we have adequate space for an indoor rec center is really, really important for me as well, because I work in these communities. And I love to see that we're giving everybody an opportunity, to be a kid, to play on a team, to do what is important when you're growing up and you're fostering these young people to know what it's like. What's it important to be a part of a team? One of the things I can tell you, it helps them in life. It shows them how to work with each other. It shows how to be a leader. So being on team sports is really, really important as well. But I want to make sure that we're looking at size. We're making sure we're not underbuilding. The other thing I want to do is make sure that we're putting it in a centralized location. I don't need a definite yet, but the closer we can do it to the central of town, it gives everybody accessibility. So that's really, really important to me as well. But just to finish on the last one, I know you love museums, I do too, but if we were to build a really nice community center where we can accommodate everyone, the Krug building would be a really nice museum one day in the city of Kyle. Thank you.
At Kyle Museum, I'm sorry.
I want to address briefly the issue related to the relationship of the senior zone and the city. CAS is a 501c3. That means it can operate semi-independently. But the fact is, it serves our seniors, period. We have no other services for seniors in the city of Kyle. It is CAS. And that's like saying our Parks Department recently got a 501c3 foundation. That's like saying, well, that's not part of the city because it's a 501c3. It can function independently, but it is a functional part of the city, as is CAS. There is no other group. The city is not providing these services that CAS is providing. No one is providing these services. We need to be viewing CAS as an integral part of the services that we provide to the seniors in our community, and we need to respect that relationship. Contracts help a lot to clarify the relationships between 501c3s and governmental agencies. So, it may be that we need to have a much clearer contract about the expectations of CAS and the city, and that certainly can be done. We have the ability to do that, but I see CAS as integral to the mission of the city. Thank you.
Well, you're both right. So, so back to location. What I've heard multiple people say is centralized. So of the two options, the one that we just made the contract on right there next to Seton on Dacey is about as centralized as I think we would get. Does someone have an opinion about that particular site as being more centralized, or it's east, it's next to Seton, it opens up a lake, creates park opportunities? Is that something we can agree, let's pursue that? Or do we want to leave that open?
If you don't mind, and just to clarify again, I understand where the CAS is coming. I understand where the seniors are coming. I've had many conversations with my mom and my dad, and I understand that part. But I'm just trying to also be responsible for the tax dollar. Look at it like that, because it's going to cost money. But the suggestion that I would like to make would be to look at, number one, La Vista Park. This is the reason why. Let's look at the square footage of how much the city has. Because again, when you have the land in place, when you have that concept in place, you can then start putting together the pieces of the puzzle. For all you know, you could have one section of a complex, because I'm looking at a complex wide, not just one building. I'm looking at a complex, like I've seen in other cities, like we did when we went to Peachtree. When we went to Peachtree, we saw how their activity center, and then on the other side was the seniors area where they had a billiards and they had card tables, and they also had another section where they had a huge kitchen where they would feed everybody. So my concept is a whole is a huge complex. So I think from there we can start with looking at the square footage of the land that we would own, or the land that it would go on. We can then build. Even if the seniors were to have your own section, because I know that's what you want. You want your own space, right? You want your own space for your own activities. I don't want no kids running in there. I want nobody using our toilets. I don't want anybody using our bathrooms. Am I being correct, ladies? Right? Yes. Am I being right? Yes. Exactly. So I'm hitting it. You want your own space. But if we can put it in a section, like in a complex area, where we also have the rec center, either connected to it or on the side with the parking, you can combine them together. So I think looking at what land we have available that is, number one, not in a floodplain. Mm-hmm. Number two. All right, hang on. Yeah. So this is a workshop environment. Yeah. So in a workshop environment, we are putting forward ideas that we haven't necessarily figured out. This is the only time we can meet and talk. And so obviously we all care about the seniors, but we're trying to process through and solve problems. So I think it would be respectful to, just because we don't all have the same opinion, to just allow for us to speak our opinions and try to work, because we still haven't gotten through the first question. And so if we keep going down this path, we are not going to solve this issue. August is going to come and go, and there's going to be a lot of speeching, but not a lot of acting. So I'm just asking for decorum to allow us to continue to have the talk as best we can. So if we can identify the square footage, that would also identify what type of concept we could build. That would also determine the funding. That would also determine how much it would actually cost if we were to go forward on a bond. And I think that's kind of where I'm looking at. If we can kind of narrow down our search, infrastructure as well. If we have plenty of parking that we could put there, if the lights and possible roundabouts, whatever it is, that would make it a lot easier for all traffic, and centralizing what Councilman Mayor Pro Tem is saying. As our city is growing, again, central east of Kyle is starting to become the east central of the area. So it would also be another factor to where we are having another development down the road on Beebe as well. So I think if we should look, and maybe other people have other opinions, I'm just thinking if we can start with looking at the site location, how much square footage do we own, what's the infrastructure look like, and then we can take it from there. If that's not feasible, then we move on to the next, because we can also narrow it down by a dollar figure. So what I heard you say was Kyle Vista Park, because number one, it's
not in a floodplain, and number two, it's larger, which means that we have the ability to expand over time.
Perfect.
We can actually have, let's say on the larger piece, I'm looking at the map. I'm looking at the map right here. The larger piece, if we designed a concept for the actual rec building and a small piece over here on this side that overlooks the hill, that overlooks the city as a addition to the rec center. So when you pull in, there's it onto the complex. Here's the rec center, here's the senior citizen on this side, okay? That has, and I don't want to go one story, I want to go 2 stories. I want to go up if we can. I know that there's walkability issues, but then you also swing back around and you also have the recreational complex that's right beside it on that end. And by involving the county, we can also do county programs. We could also, and also you've got 2 major schools that are right in that area. So we can also keep the school district in mind. And then, of course, it provides opportunities for volunteer for all in those communities, because you have Amberwood, you got Kensington, and you've got another one that's down the road as well. So I'm just trying to centralize everything. If we look at the site location of what we own and what we can build and look at from there, and then if that is not feasible for everybody else, then we can move on to the next.
So it's rebuttal is way too strong of a word, because I agree with your points, full stop. But my question is, so the reason I was hearing centralized is, Cal Vista Park, this is, if we're going to do a senior center or a rec center or, maybe not the library, but the other components, the centralized version is better because it serves the entire city. So north, south, east, and west. And if you live northwest or southwest or even southeast, the Cal Vista Park location is not very close. It's real close to folks who live right there, but it's supposed to serve the entire community. And then the other question is, my thinking was that the funding that we would pursue for this project would also be a park development fund to allow for us to fully fund bringing the lake property to life. So if we pursued Cal Vista Park, they would take away our ability to go to the voters and ask for money in partnership potentially with the county to really bring that lake, to maybe get $10 million or something like that to make that a lake property. So do you have thoughts on those comments?
Those as well, because again, I want to be able to focus on what we own first, and then utilizing that land. And if we're in the process of getting that, yes. I'm just throwing the 2 options. One is that Vista Park is a larger area, and again, where it's at as far as the infrastructure. The lake part would be also a feasible one as well. It would be a lot more beautiful and so forth. It'd have more room. I'm just looking at all options, what we have. I'm not saying let's go with number 1 or let's go with number 2. I'm just want us to really consider all the factors, because and also with the funding, if we already own this, or we don't have to put that much infrastructure issues there, we can figure with the numbers and so forth. Because going forward, whatever bond we bring, the residents are going to have questions. And not only are they being hit with the taxes on our roads, but I'm sure the school district's going to be coming around the corner with their bonds as well. So we got to be mindful of all of that.
And the other thing to consider is, we have said that we can do this within the 59-cent tax rate, but our tax rate's currently 46 cents. So we tried to hold the tax rate steady at the last budget, but that didn't happen. So it does mean that eventually the tax rate will have to go up. So even though the number is not going up higher than what we originally said and what the voters approved, it still has to go up, which means next year and the following year's tax bills will go up. So it's a good point.
Jesse, do we have a map of the property we're acquiring? Okay, could you somehow highlight what's in the floodplain, what's not in the floodplain? It's all, okay. So we'd have to build up to get it out of the floodplain, correct? And that's kind of what the plan is, to build up on this property in collaboration with the, hopefully with the county is what our hope is, because I know the county is very interested in this property as well. So Building up on the floodplain is not something that is really technical. It's just trucking in dirt, it's building the immediate ponds, and we already have a really good-sized pond that we can work with on as well. So it's something that's doable, and making sure the building doesn't flood, I promise you, that's something we're not going to allow. I had this conversation because certain entities have built in the floodplain, and it's always turned into a really bad place because they don't build up. Something we would do is build up and make sure that we're out of it. The majority of this property is really good for development.
Bless you.
There's been some developments wanted to come in here, and their plan was to build up. Unfortunately, the drainage was what's keeping them. We don't have that problem because we would have adequate drainage. We're not trying to overbuild the property like most developers are. So it's something that we would be cognizant about. But I'm looking at centralized. What I would like to see is a building with a beautiful view in the back of a really nice little man-made lake, and a park as well. So limiting ourselves to just a building is something I don't want to do. I want to make sure you have park space as well. You have parking, adequate parking. You have amenities, walking trails, safe walking trails. So a little bit of everything. Let's not just limit ourselves to a building. Let's look at the entire property and see what else we can do. I would love to see y'all have everything, and that's the entire community.
So I guess to follow up on that, what is the buildable area?
We
within
think that's
this one?
on this property on Daisy Lane, we believe it's around 20 to 25 acres, depending on the exact engineering. So we'd have to have a engineer look at all that, but somewhere in that 20 to 25 acres, which we believe could accommodate the community center that you've talked about. Certainly doesn't have all the room for expansion, but you would have a lot of room for all the things that you've talked about today that you wanted to do.
And a quick question, do you know what's the area that we are utilizing for the public safety center currently to include the parking?
Acreage?
An acreage. 6?
6 acres.
So 25 acres should be plenty.
All right, can y'all see the screen? I'm screen sharing now. So this is Kensington Trails. I don't know if you can see my mouse at all. Okay, so this is Kensington Trails. This is South Lake Ranch. This is Daisy Lane. And Daisy Lane was just completed all the way up. So up here is Kyle Vista Park. This is one option. And then this is the other option, which is a little closer, but they're still both within just a few minutes of each other. The thinking, we just voted at our last meeting to go into contract to purchase 80 acres. It starts here and it runs down through the middle of the lake, all the way to the dam, and to the back, and then up this entire stretch of Kensington. You can see the cutout here. This did not used to be in the floodplain, but in 2014, in 2015, we had the floods, the entire maps got changed, and all of this went into the floodplain. But it's just barely in the floodplain. And we've talked to various agencies and groups about what it would take to actually bring it completely out of the floodplain. And you can see this square piece right here. Essentially, it would be a small amount of cut and fill, so we wouldn't be introducing new soils, but that's what would bring it out. So the idea would be just on the other side of the bridge, next to Seton, would be the constructed facilities. And then what you can also see is here at Kensington, you see how there's these sort of cul-de-sacs. Well, Kensington does not have good walkability at all. You can see the sidewalks that are put right up next to these vehicles, and so there's just not a lot of opportunity for folks to take walks. However, if we were able to do this project, we could have, these would be entrances into the park here and here and here and here. And so folks would be able to walk into a park that if we complete the vision, it's all about vision at this point, but if we complete the park, we could have trails, and this is 40 feet deep at the middle. This is not going dry. There are huge trees all over this, but the idea would be able to have nice walking trails all around. So if you can imagine kids, seniors, activities, various groups and organizations that would be utilizing a facility here would have right off the back porch, if we do it right, a world-class major park surrounding an amenity that Kyle lacks, which is water amenities. And so that's the thinking. But Tobias is right. We don't own it yet. We're in contract to buy next month. We have floodplain issues to try to work through. Just because we've been told it's doable doesn't mean that it's doable. My thinking would be, if I could have it my way, would be to pursue this as a primary and then allow for Kyle Vista to be a backup and say, let's move forward. And then if this Kyle Vista turns out to be, if the Lake Kensington, or whatever you call it, turns out to not be feasible for whatever reason, we have a fallback. So we can still pursue the community center and the scope either way. We just need to make a decision so that staff can know how best to spend their time and resources.
What is the accessibility for the Kensington, for the Kyle Vista
I'll show you.
land? Like, do we have more opportunity for entrance?
Yeah, there's a curb cut right here. And you can see this is this is nice developable land that is in the floodplain, but has to be issued. So this is the current curb cut.
Okay.
No, well, Kensington
That's
is up this direction.
Oh, okay, this is Kyle Vista.
Yeah, there's Kensington. No, this is,
The Daisy one.
I'm so confused.
we need to give it, I'm calling it Lake Kensington because it makes the most sense and it's
Okay.
unique to the project. But, because we have a lot of Daisy Lane, Daisy's becoming a major road for us. So it would be here, but I think we would want to redo the curb cut anyway
But there are different ways, opportunities for entry to the same location, correct? Because we will have Daisy, and then you have, what road do you have in the back?
I think just
I wanna see
Daisy
the
would
map.
be it on
Okay,
both.
sorry, I have it right here. I don't know why. I think those are things to be considered, because the more roads that we have to, the more concrete we have to pour in order to have accessibility, the more
So,
money we're gonna have to spend, number one. Number two, is there any section of this property that is in a floodplain? Because we can always add water features.
This is a big water feature.
I don't know how you add water features.
I know, we can have some sort of fountains, water features that we can, man-made ones that we can have. What I don't want to do, and don't get me wrong, I really love the property, and I would like to have some natural water, like the one from the Kyle Vista Park. Jesus, I'm confused now, too. The one property we're about to buy. I would like to see that, because that will allow also for natural trails, which I think would just absolutely be so cohesive to this project. But I would hate that, things go wrong and then more of the piece of land gets into the floodplain, and then we have another problem to deal with.
Mayor, I would also say from a staff perspective, when we're talking about location, we don't necessarily need this is the location we want, direction on, if it's the will of the council, Daisy primary, Lake Vista secondary. At that point, we can go get conceptual designs and square on each one and bring them back so that you have a better idea of entrances, how big it would be, how buildable it would be, that type of thing. So even just that is great direction for
We
us.
can give you a footprint on each site to kind of show you how it would lay out, what the entrances would be required, if there's any deceleration lanes, turns, curb cuts. That's the engineering we would need to do, but we do want to try to narrow it down to, if those are the two locations you want to
those are
look
two
at.
locations we want to
then
do.
we
and-
can do that,
And
yes,
not
sir.
putting a priority on AB, just keeping them both prioritized. See,
Okay.
bring us back a plan and see which one's more feasible for us. So that's what we want to do. We're going to keep them both
Yeah.
as primary sites and just bring us back which one's more adequate, which one's more doable, and give us the pros and cons for it, please.
Yeah, we could do that. I do think we need to get, all the uses. I want to make sure we have a good idea of the uses, because from today, to meet that August deadline of calling an election, we'll have to move very quickly to bring you back some options and costs and square footages and things like that. So on your April 2nd agenda, I'll likely have a contract to bring forward to get started on the architectural renderings, the engineering, and those kinds of things. So it'd be helpful if there's any more discussion on the usage. Sounds like it's pretty clear, rec center, library, senior center, some type of facility options on those is kind of where everybody wants to go. But if that's not correct, let us know so we can move in a different direction.
So can we talk about shared use versus exclusivity? Because that's what I hear a lot of tension around, whether or not these are going to be independent, solely operated by the nonprofits, or whether it's going to be integrated. I'm on team integrated. So I think that there could be elements of a shared use facility that would work specifically for the seniors. Breakout rooms, kitchen, potentially, certain gaming areas, and then maybe like something smaller. But then there would also be access to a larger facility, a larger room that gets shared and used by more than just the seniors, because the seniors wouldn't use it all the time anyway. And we want to be as efficient as we possibly can with the space. So one huge need that we have, which I think Councilmember Parsley brought up at the beginning, was we don't have the ability to do really any large form presentations, no auditorium, no good audio, video, key light, we just don't have any of that. So I've been holding out hope that eventually we would have a hotel convention center, which will come eventually if we stay on the ball and don't lose it to Buda, which is a possibility. But what if we said one of the components to this facility would be sort of a combined space, auditorium, venue where it's like, this would be on the list of places we would go if we were thinking about having a presentation or a meeting or a luncheon, those kind of things. Is that something we want to pursue? And the pros and cons of that for the seniors would be, the con would be it wouldn't be your space altogether. You would have to, in terms of the main room, you'd have to, reserve it. But the pro is it's going to be much nicer than what we're going to build if we're just building something for y'all to use exclusively. So that's really what the same basic conundrum we've been in for a while. It's been, if it's just for one group, it's smaller. But if we think bigger and try to solve more problems, it becomes nicer. But there's still a drawback to that.
Yes, because that's exactly what I had pointed out in that I had written a couple of nights ago. Community centers can also host larger community gatherings, city conferences, say state of the city, weddings, food meal drives for neighborhood game nights, mass area for city events, including summer program and camps. And that also leads to volunteer opportunities. So imagine a large center like what we saw in Georgia, where you had the community center, where you had people there and the seniors in there. Then you also had the summer camps that are there. You combine them together. They all work together in that sense to where you offer volunteer services. You provide meals for students in camps, which could also help reduce some of the costs for families who are having to pay for these camps. You would have an on-site kitchen and so forth, and they could be able to provide those kind of meals. I understand all this would be eventually a budget line item for all this. But I think we're just on the right page, that we are needing desperately an area for conferences, an event center, an area to hold our summer camps, and also with what the seniors need as well. So just combining it all together and just having again, my looking at it, a complex-wide area, and then you can be able to have different concepts. I think we're on the right page, but right now it's just the location. Is it going to be A or B, or is it going to be B or A? To get the numbers and come back to us and say, this is feasible, this is how large you could build the square footage. If you want to go with 200 parking spaces, this is where we're at. But again, we're trying to make it more walkability. If we reduce some of the car spaces, then putting it in this location, you would have more foot traffic and so forth. And so it's just combining all those pieces together. That's the way I look at it.
I don't call people at workshops to just go.
I think that the issue for the seniors is for our regular activities, we need to have a regular building.
So what is that? What do you mean by that?
Well, the seniors have a variety of activities that they do on a regular basis, classes, exercise, where we don't need to be moved out of our building by something else. What I don't think would be an issue is sharing a large room, because we know what our events are. If we can reserve ahead for our big events, then that's not a big issue. But on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, we need to have our area that is not shared because we use it. And we would use it more if we had it. We'd do evening things more than we do now if we had the availability, but we just don't. So I don't see a real issue with sharing a really large meeting space or event space. As far as the kitchen is concerned, we need to make sure that we're able to provide meals 5 days a week at a reasonable cost for the seniors, because we can get reimbursed for that. I mean, that's a financial issue for everyone, and not be, once again, kicked out of the kitchen for some other event. So that's one of the things I'll be watching carefully as we develop the concepts for the senior center and for the other parts of this complex.
So I don't think that they, honestly, for what I'm reading in the room, there is an issue of sharing a large space. I think having a standalone building will put a burden on the seniors on like operating costs and maintenance and staffing and things, along that way. So I think that communicating with them on what the needs are for the space, like a kitchen is something we know they need, and something, and a place that fits to the amount of members they have is something that we need to consider. But that way the city has a hold of the entire property, because if we wanted to have different components, like have parks to be a part of it and have the seniors to be a part of it and have some library space or places for us to do presentations, I would even think that we should have a rooftop or something to do on, we have talked about that for a long time, to having a space for events for the city of Kyle. So those are things that I think that are not out of question for, I don't believe that they're asking for a standalone building. They're okay sharing as long as we have a large facility. So those are things that I feel like we are all in agreement with.
So just to piggyback off that, one of the suggestions that Councilmember Tobias had that I really liked was a 2-story building. I saw a library concept where the library is on the bottom, and upstairs they had like these little walkways where people could go up there and work and have a quiet space. So it's something I would share with the 2-story building. We could definitely do a lot more and have more space. So it's something I would probably be behind as well. Making sure the seniors have their kitchen 5 days a week is important. Making sure they're feeding everybody. If they've got some possible funding sources, that's great. That's definitely very welcome. The large room I can get behind as long as we work with the seniors. We've got to put something in the contract where it's an equal opportunity, and that's something that I would really be, because right now, I think they feel like they're not being equal in the Krug Center, so we got to make sure that there's something in there that protects them for their times that they need. I'd like them to come up with a plan to see what days they really, really need, what's functional, so that way as a city, we can work with them and see what's their need is. That's really what we need from you all, is an assessment of what your real need is per day, per hour, and that way we can move forward on this.
Should we give direction on looking at both locations? Should we decide on that?
Yeah, I think, they both take their access off of Daisy. So, I mean, in terms of the scope, as we're developing it, it's the budget we're going to run against. The acquisition of the land is cash funded through the general fund. So the cost basis for the land is going to be zero, regardless of which way, in terms of the bond proceeds that we're going for.
Are you guys needing direction on the
Well,
land? No,
look,
right?
if we said, all right, we've given you all enough, go forth and prosper, they would. But you want to know who'd have all the power? Would be the consultants. It creates the possibility of conflict, just like our downtown revitalization plan, just like our downtown master plan, where we haven't given enough specificity and clarity when the consultants come back and they go, is this what you want? And it's like not feasible, it's not remotely. So, there needs to be, so have y'all seen the Round Rock Public Library? Has anybody been to the Round Rock Public Library yet? Brand new. It was bond approved, I think 2 years ago, maybe, and they just built it. So here's an example when you're talking about a 2-story. It's actually 3-story, but you can see sort of, and it's surface, I'm sorry, it's garage parked, which I think should be something that we pursue no matter what. But this is, I mean, it's a treasure that they just built, and it's east downtown. Is what the Round Rock Public Library is. So this has been, in terms of like the whiteboarded inspiration, the new Round Rock Public Library has been on my mind. Now, obviously, it's not a rec center. It's a massive centralized library. So the uses are completely different. But I thought the Round Rock Public Library would make a great thing to potentially at least pursue, something like the new library. So here's the question: if we have to triage, okay, let's say we've got $150 million of wants and only $75 million in needs, so we have to cut it in half. We've talked about auditorium space, we've talked about museum space, we've talked about kitchens, maybe multiple kitchens, basketball courts, obviously a library annex. If you have to force rank them, and Councilmember Heiser is not allowed to play this game, but if you had to force rank them, what would be in your mind? These are the things that, like, because you could make the argument that every element of this, except for the senior center, we have potentially incorporated into other projects. Sportsplex, indoor deal with the, potentially a major league team. We have major, minor. How do we say that? I was trying not to say things I'm not allowed to say.
After saying I can't participate in the conversation.
Yeah, force rank of the senior center, rec center, library. Which ones in your mind, if we had to diminish one section of that, which would you diminish and which would you not diminish?
But
so that we can give that as feedback to these folks who are designing.
why would we have to diminish? Like, nobody is putting a cap on the size of this building. Why don't we do a 4-story building? Like, let's think a little big. This building won't be completed for another 5 years. If so.
The reason I say diminish is because if you take a $75 million budget and you calculate, let's say, $500 a foot, you come up with a square footage. And it's not going to be enough to fulfill all of our desires. So we need to be able to say, these are the things we want you to design for, but this is what the priority is. This is absolutely what we're trying to solve.
Well, I wouldn't want to, since we are going to have a senior component and we are talking about a youth component, I would like to see there a children component. So now we're talking about all like age demographics for the city of Kyle. So I don't think any of those three need to be left out.
What is a youth component?
Like if we do the indoor basketball courts, or we open space for parks to have, because Parks doesn't currently have, we're using the Crook building, and even that is not enough space for them to do a lot of the programs they're currently having. So I would love to see a whole huge section for the seniors, and then maybe on the second story you have something for the youth or the children, and then in another, I'm thinking too big, but we're gonna get to the point that the city will need this facility to accommodate for the population that we're gonna have in 15, 20 years.
So for myself, the one component I could see us downsizing a little bit, not doing away 100% with, would probably be the library, because we already have a library, but to have a secondary library would be great. Just means in the future, we probably would need another library. But just kind of downsizing the library size a little bit would probably be something I could probably get behind, because like I said, we already have a library, but, and the thing about the library could go 2 stories, so we could actually build vertically. We can build it in a way where we can still have all the functionality and just have it on 2 floors, up and down. So it's something.
I'm not on board with that.
Okay.
Downsizing the library. We barely have room in the library we have right now.
No, we're going to keep that one too as well.
I know, but I don't think that we're talking about expansion of the library. Initially, this concept started like 2 years ago with a huge library that we were needing, and then we added the other components. So I would not be on board with downsizing a library space.
So which part of the component would you be wanting to downsize?
None.
I think that's where,
Okay.
I guess that's where the thought process in my mind that I've been having is having a complex where you would have if you have a complex wide, you have several different buildings in one area.
But which building goes first?
But well, they all go eventually, but you see, like what I'm trying to say is if you have the library component connected to the rec center, you would have that connectivity there. But at the same lot, you also can combine, you have a senior citizen area that you could be able to have on the same site. I think what we're looking at is like we want this one big building that's gonna host all these things. That's the problem we're having with the Krug building, okay? Because like I have told everybody before, and I told, you get a plan together, you set your dates. These are my dates for my dances. These are my dates for my camps, and you stick to those dates. Well, obviously, it's not happening. So the complex scenario, again, I keep making, where is our site location? How much square footage do we have first? And if we can combine all three components, we don't need to dissect and say, rec center is more important than the library is more important than the seniors. I think the key is to see how much square footage right off the bat the city owns, and if we go with section A or like project A or project B, we can see what can be developed. And now as soon as we can identify the square footage, we can then start looking at the concept design by saying, this is what we're going to take away and not take away, or this is what we can keep all three. And then once we figure that out, once we see what the city can bring back to us, we can then say, this is how much it's going to cost versus this one. And if we do that, we have this much money in the bank on this side. We have this much money from the county. We're going after funding from the state or the federals to get that. So when we propose it, if we propose it to the voters in August, they can see all the numbers already. This is the site plan we had. This is the concept we have, whether it's a complex or not. It's going to be a combination of all three. Funding of 10 million is going to come here or 5 million from there. This is what the city's going to contribute. We're coming to the taxpayers to come up with this dollar amount. And then that way they have all their ducks in a row and so forth. And we decided on site location, concept design, and all three are most important, but we can still combine them all together.
Well, I'll just give you the rough math. 75 million, if that's the city's portion, at $500 a square feet, dollars a square foot is roughly, I just lost it. 750 a square foot would get you 100,000 square feet. So if the cost was twice that, which is what I actually think it might be, you might be looking more like 50 to 75,000 square feet of a facility. Now, what they've said at the beginning is that their range is 60 to 70 up to maybe 110, 120, 130. But if you're looking at 120, 130 at $1,000 a square foot, that's twice our budget. So what I'm just trying to get, and then also, I think we should really focus, even if we didn't put it on the same site, we really should build out this lake into a park because it's such a treasure, it's such an amenity. So, and that might be 10 million of it as well. And then there's potential to partner with the county, which we need to be engaged with, but if we're not, but in terms of state and federal grant dollars, if we put that into the budget and then don't get it, it threatens the project. So I don't want to do anything that threatens the project. Bear, go ahead.
Yeah. I think, Mayor, to the spirit of the question you asked, that is the amount of money that we have in theory versus the needs that we have and versus the priorities, how are we going to allocate those funds? And candidly, I don't think anyone up here is going to sit and make a decision on that. I think everyone's going to hedge. So I don't really see how this is a productive conversation. Not a single person in here is going to tell the seniors that they're going to be deprioritized over a library and activity center. And I guarantee you, if Zuniga were here, he'd be losing his mind over this question because he wants a library more than almost anything else.
It is the question we have to answer.
I understand.
But why don't-
I'm not I agree, but it's not. This is why they were misled multiple times in the past. This is why they don't have a facility now, and this is why my concern and what led to my statements to you guys before, which some of you still are shaking your heads at me for, is I don't want you feeling that same way when this is all done. So we need to figure out a better pathway forward on how to solve this problem, because not everyone is going to get what they want. And look, there are going to be groups of people who feel like government have failed them after this process. Unless we get our you-know-whats together and are willing to make an unpopular statement sitting here that might upset somebody, there is no way that this is going to...
Okay, well, make your statement.
Can I ask a question?
Right.
So if we were to, I'm sorry. So right now, we're trying to stick to a budget to not go over the tax that we have initially proposed when we did the road bond, and we have not gotten there yet. Why don't we ask what would be the cost estimate for the facility that we are all wanting, and how much tax increase will that create? And let the voters decide.
Well, that's what we're trying to do.
But we're trying to cap it at 59 cents. And so it's like we're already putting handcuffs on what we can do and try to kick somebody off the road. And I don't think that that's the vision we need to have.
Well,
because somebody is going to get chopped off, and I don't agree with that.
Well, the thing about a bond is that it's a bond proposition. It's a proposal. It's a question that we have to ask, and we have to put some guards around that. We have to say, we propose this, yes or no. So what we have to do between now and August is come up with the guardrails so that we can propose something. If you want to propose a 70-cent tax rate, and let's give them
60, I don't know.
We can propose whatever we want, but we can only propose one thing, and we're only going to get one shot at it. So that's what I'm trying to figure out is...
I don't even know we're even there yet. Because, again, I keep going back to, let's decide what location, either option A or option B, would be feasible, first of all, to build on. And let's see how much square footage we own first. Once we find out how much square footage is feasible to build on, what kind of a concept would actually work there, then we can go back and hammer out who's more important than the other. We've got to find the location first. And that's where I think if we can get staff to look at that and say, this area right here is feasible, and you can actually build a 60,000 square foot here, at the parking here, or this side and so forth, or an additional 70,000. This site over here is great. We would just have to maybe add an additional million or so for the infrastructure itself or this founding, but we can do that. But this design, as you can see, if you look at Daisy Lane, would be a little bit different concept than you would have at Vista Park. Okay, because there's two sections. If you look at Vista, there's actually two sections, right up there on top of the hill and right on the other side where the big land is. So I think our main thing is, what can we utilize? What is it that we own first and we can basically build on? And then once we can identify that, we can say this would work better because of the infrastructure, what we owe, and then we can go on of who's more priority, seniors, library, and so forth. It's all in there. I don't see what the big argument is. We just got to identify the location, what we can build, and then from there, what the cost would be, and then we can build from there. And then we can start dissecting if we need to cut back on this and we need to cut back on that. It's starting from ground zero to see where we're at.
No, go ahead, Bear. Go ahead.
With all due respect, I have no idea how that makes this process any more legitimate for us moving forward. When it doesn't matter, if we have 60,000 square feet on one property versus the other, which I'm pretty sure based on the acreage that we could achieve, it comes down to money. So the question is priority and money. What do we have available to us? If we just sit in, what time is it? We're still on item 1 and we have 15 minutes left in this dedicated time, and I hope we'll go over to continue, but we're just kicking the can down the road. We're literally just like the hard question with the hardest part of this process is the question the mayor asked. And if we just sit and focus on the location first, which to me is completely irrelevant, we are just forcing ourselves to answer this question at the next time we meet.
Because
And
if-
maybe we aren't ready as a group to make that decision.
Because
Maybe
if
that's
any,
the case.
well, in all due respect, if any of these locations don't work, then at least we know. Okay? And then at least we know that these locations won't work. We've gone through the process of elimination on that end.
But we don't need to do that. Staff can go
That's
and do
what I'm
that
trying-
between
that's the
now and the
point.
next decision.
Mr.
Can
Hyde,
check out the viability
exactly.
of both. We are
That-
the ones, though, that have to make the decision on what the
Exactly.
priority is.
So-
That's not staff's decision.
That
So
is
our
wh-
time together here, the six of us, should be spent, given we can't have these discussions at any other point in time, need to not be about location and need to be about use. Because the next question then is, how do we pay for it?
Yeah.
The location is something that they can come back and present to us based on the findings of this conversation.
Okay. So we've already identified what the usages
We
would be.
haven't though, because the question was, what do we have to cut or how do we have to allocate 100% in order to be able to fund it using the bond capacity that we have?
Okay.
We have not answered that question.
So the point I'm trying to make is we could have all three of those components, right? Or two. The seniors, the library, and the rec centers, all the things that we've been.
We haven't voted on that.
I understand that.
I agree with that. I agree that I feel like there needs to be more components, and I think that's where we need to narrow it down. What are the uses going to be that we all agree on and vote on that? And then based on that, then we can go from there. But right now, we're just talking about 3 components, but in my opinion, we have more.
So is it 33.3, 33.3, 33.3 in terms of use? Or are we going to do 25, 25, 25, and then an additional 25 of mixed in to try to find multi-use space?
But that is exactly the question. That's the question that we need to give to the consultants who are going to design something. What percentage of our resources do you want applying towards these things? Otherwise, they're going to propose something that we're not going to want.
But then if you say 30% is going to be senior, 40% is going to be library, and the remaining is going to be something else, when they say, how much land do you have? How much space do you have to build on that?
We have enough buildable
Okay,
acres on both
that's
parcels.
my question, was to
That's-
see where that's at.
We have enough
You
land
know.
on both parcels to build what we want to build.
Okay.
What it is now limiting us is the dollars. So we got to decide as a council right now, how much goes to the senior center, how much goes to the library, and how much goes to the rec space as well. So we need to figure that out as a council, because the land is buildable. The 3 building concept, you just made the building smaller because you're building 3 individual buildings. So you're now looking at wastewater, water lines, everything else, parking. So you're taking dollars away from the building itself if you do the 3 building concept. And that's just my experience in building. So just letting you know, we've got to be very cognizant about the dollars because we're limited. So let's make sure that we bring back a plan that we can move forward. But right now, what they need from us is we need to give staff direction on what's what. And because the land, that's a no pointer, because both properties are buildable. If it comes back and says, the floodplain is bad on the other one, then we just don't build there, we build on the other one.
Is there any way, I'm so sorry, that we can at least each of us identify what are the uses that we want to see in this building and vote on that?
We can.
I think that would be a way to start.
Well, if I could just offer one thing, I think it's good conversation to get all of this out here. Obviously, we all want to have some kind of space, and I think the plan is to bring this forward for a vote in November. So those are 2 good outcomes of the meeting today. One of the things I think we need to do with our consultants is come up with a needs assessment for the space. How much space do we need for a growing city, for recreation, for a library, and for the senior center? And what would that total number be? To the mayor's point, how many square feet is this thing going to be? If I could give you at least some estimates of what do we think those are, so you could see what's the total square footage.
And how do-
perhaps there's a total square footage that works. For
Can
How do
get
we
that
have
done
time
in
for that,
to go to
Brian?
bond?
Sorry?
How do we have time for that?
I'll work very, very quickly. That's going to be the challenge, is frankly being able to pull all this off in 4 months. But that's what we want to bring forward to you very quickly as a contract, so I can come back, have those discussions with you. We'd also recommend some community engagement too, as well as we try to finalize all the elements that we would have and bring you back a plan and some options. And to Councilmember Parsley's point, if we decide that we need more space, or we believe we need more space and the 59 cents would provide, then you'll have an option to decide, do you want to have that be a future phase at some point down the road? Or would you want to go and ask for 65 cents or 63 cents or some other number? Those are the types of things I think we could give you perhaps some structure to make that decision down the road.
The problem with that is you're still leaning on a consultant to tell us what to do.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And a consultant can tell us we need 200,000 square feet of rec space. They could say that the needs are literally greater than what we have the ability to pursue. So we are the ones, in my opinion, who need to put the guardrails around the consultant or the designer and say, we want you to build within a budget of 75 million or 100 million, and we want these components in this priority. Now you go tell us, but if we do it through the form of a needs assessment, we've had needs assessments. We need shared meeting space, we need space for seniors, all that. And what is the right combination? That's a judgment call that this group has to make.
I'd like to just comment on Councilmember Rizzo's. I don't think the seniors are saying we need our own separate building. These could be integrated buildings, all three of them. What we're asking is that the seniors have dedicated space that is their priority space and they don't get kicked out.
Has anybody been inside Fellowship Church at Plum Creek?
Yeah.
All right, so the concept there is they've got a centralized meeting area, which is like where the gallery is, the auditorium, and then surrounding it, they've got kitchen space, they've got meeting rooms, breakout rooms,
Yeah, as long as
all
because
around
we've got
that.
a priority, our ability to access the rest of that building's an advantage. So it doesn't have to be 3 separate buildings. It just has to be dedicated use at certain periods.
Yeah.
But that,
Is Betty still here? Betty?
yeah, she's nodding, yes.
Oh, there you are. Betty, something we've talked about before, and I think this is mission critical now going into the next meeting, is we need to know, like, what are your need to haves and what are your nice to haves? Because otherwise, we're just,
Well, that's what I've been saying. We needed to communicate. I've been saying this all along.
well, this is just you have, and that's completely fair. This is just step one. So moving forward, we need to know that as soon as possible. Because otherwise, like, I still don't know if you guys, if the expectation of the whole is that you have your own standalone facility, or if because that was what you wanted at one point. Not you necessarily, but the group. So if we have to make this decision, y'all need to try to it's got to be, the more details we have, the easier it is for a decision to be made. Otherwise, we're just going to sit here and spin our wheels.
Share space at any time is what the problem's going to be. We're sharing it with one entity right now. You're thinking of a community rec, that's everybody. We will have trouble with the dining room when we want it and with whatever. We need to have space, if it's all together though, we need to have space that says, this is your dining area, this is your kitchen, this is your yada. So we don't have to call the city and say, can we have that dining room this week? Because we do dances on weekends or whatever. That's what we need.
So that's where we need to know what are the needs to have versus
yes,
nice to have.
but respectfully, that's going to put us into a situation where the asks are greater than our ability. So what I would suggest that we pursue is something like, all right, you have a smaller kitchen and a smaller room that are dedicated to you, that if you're wanting to have your certain meetings at certain regular intervals, you can, but whenever you're wanting to have your monthly blowout or your quarterly or your annual meetings where you're trying to get several hundred people together at once, that's not space that we need to pay for you to only be able to use a few times a year. That's something that we should be more efficient in terms of how we use our taxpayer dollars to make it available to you to reserve, which means it is yours during the times that you reserve, but also for our campers. I can't tell you how many different times throughout the course of the year that various groups have major space issues, and because we have no common area to meet together. So it would be wrong of us, in my opinion, to spend all of our money to put into solving one group's needs as opposed to multiples.
You can do it by combining like a $600-person dining room that splits with a wall where we could have our space to feed the 200 and you can have your space to do your campers and whatever. It could be shared with a dividing wall. We have to think big and divide so we can share spaces. Exercise dances could be on one side and something else. to say that you're gonna only spare one and we have to reserve is gonna get us in a bigger pickle than we already do reserve. We do spaces and have to reserve with, City Park and Recs.
Well, that's not the worst thing that's ever happened, though, is having to reserve a
But I'm
space.
saying yes, it has, because it's complicated. The city always gets first choice. And, well, I'm not gonna go there, but it does become bad. It does become bad. It's a big conflict of not knowing or having this space and then being called, the city needs the space, and we've already made plans. So it's not as easy as you think, because you don't have to do the calendar.
Hey,
You
Betty.
haven't done this for 7.5 years.
Hey, Betty.
It's not easy.
If you can get us that list of needs and wants, it's going to make this process a lot easier for us to try to identify where we best can suit your priorities and the group's priorities moving forward. Otherwise, we're going to keep spinning these wheels over and over again. As soon as possible. Yeah, sure. Deal. Okay.
You want to know the priority that was once high on my list, but that the further we have these discussions, the lower it goes, is the rec center.
That's a surprise.
So let's talk about it. Because the rec center has got the most unique space requirements. It's the one thing that can't be combined and easily used. You have to program it as well. Plus, we are actively pursuing the expansion of our sports facilities and infrastructure in other areas. So is it top priority that we spend our money? Because you can easily build a $75 million rec center. Easily. And it won't even be the best one in the region. So that's where our resources are quite limited. So if you had to choose between, like, let's say we could really solve the seniors, we could really solve our gathering needs, our auditorium needs, our food needs, library annex needs, but we really needed to say, let's take the rec center component out. Is that something that y'all would be willing to prioritize so that the designers, when they actually sit down and start looking at it, can know where they have room to maneuver? Hey, what, are we having an offline conversation right now? It's not you I'm talking about, it's Bear. He just ran away. I thought. Let's take a 10, we're going to take a 10-minute break.
Yes, thank you.
Literally talking to Bear. Meeting back to order. With the council member in earshot to make the quorum. So we were trying to get folks to talk about their priorities. What do each of us think is the most important thing to add into a facility? For me, it's shared meeting space, ironically, is the most important thing, and the ability to host large-scale events up to, we'll say, maybe 500 people.
Yeah.
So that's what I think, and I'm willing to sacrifice the rec center components in order to make that happen. That's my force ranking.
For me, it's the seniors. And I really think we need our dedicated space. I think shared, the big room for shared, like our big dances, that's okay. But other than that, I think we need a dedicated kitchen. We'll use that kitchen at least 5 days a week. And a dedicating area that's big enough to feed or do activities for our general group.
Is there a way to do a kitchen where the seniors, for example, would have the ability to use it 24/7, but it would also be available for others to use? Or is it like walled off, we can't share the same
Why do we
ovens?
have to limit to one kitchen, though?
What do you mean?
Kitchens are expensive, but
I know, but are we gonna put a limit?
Yeah.
The more we grow, we will need a space
Yeah.
that needs, like, if we even wanted to rent spaces, we wanna make sure that we have rooms that allow for, additional kitchens. So I don't think we need to limit ourselves to one
Yeah.
kitchen. And that's not something for us to right now decide. Like, if
And I
we were
think
to
that-
put everything together and let somebody else make a design of, with the needs.
yeah, I think that'd be problematic for shared because they have special uses and we'll have We'll be doing government-funded meals, so there may be some restrictions on that.
In regard to your comment about the rec center, we have another opportunity on the table possibly in the future to have some indoor space, gym space. So I feel like that for me, although I want the space for park programming, I feel like there's a chance that we'll be able to check that box outside of this project. So for me, Mayor, I'll agree with you that would be based on the current circumstances, I'd be willing to give up that as well.
The problem if you eliminate the rec center, though, is that that's a big draw to the voters. If you take a proposition to the voters for shared community space and senior center and library annex, that's not necessarily going to be motivating to the average voter.
You're absolutely right.
The rec center would be motivating to the widest group of people.
But okay, fair. But if we're able to check that box and have rec center amenities in another location, we can't just not exclude that from this conversation for the sake of our fear that a bond wouldn't pass.
So at the Frisco Senior Center, they had part of their dedicated senior rooms was like shuffleboard tables and their pool, billiards, darts, those kind of things could be called rec center. But when I'm thinking of rec center as the components, I'm thinking of indoor basketball / volleyball
me too.
courts.
That's all I'm talking
and aquatics. Those two things, if we add them into the scope, indoor basketball and volleyball plus an Olympic pool of some kind or an outdoor pool, those elements are very expensive. So they're going to take the bulk of what we're trying to pursue. So if we took those out, it would give us the ability to pursue other types of rec center activities like billiards and, those,
Exercise equipment.
exercise equipment.
I think we should definitely set the list of priorities we have. What do we want to see in this building? And then I don't know if staff can work with that, communicate that to a designer and bring something back to us, because trying to take out the rec center component is not, I don't think that's what we should be doing here. I think we need to have the rec center, I think we need to have the senior space, and I think we need to have some youth and park space for parks to do their programming too. To include the library and a little museum.
And that's what I think we haven't talked about either, is what does the scope of the rec center look like? What are we proposing on that in? Because all of a sudden I heard a pool. I hadn't heard that before. So I'm trying to see what we're looking for as far as a rec center. What kind of space, what kind of needs we're looking for? Because we did talk about the senior center, we talked about the library. We haven't really dove into the rec center. What are we looking for? Are we just looking for basketball courts, shared / volleyball, whatever it is, courts? Or are we looking at also a swimming pool? What are we looking at, a weight room? What are we looking at for the rec center?
What do we want to ask our Parks Department, what the needs are that they feel like, our youth would benefit from?
And what would that size be?
And not just youth, when we're talking about youth, we're talking about everybody.
Or seniors are
the
probably
Hayes,
going to
the
use
Hayes
the pool.
YMCA in Buda has although it's it's a smaller, but they have an indoor swimming pool.
Camp Moody, yeah.
They've also got one of those steam rooms. They've got a spa, hot tub. They've also got a smaller kids pool, and then outside they have a big splash pads with slides and stuff. You try to build just those components today, it's probably $50 million.
I think when we ask the city to come back with those proposals, whoever we're looking at, we can have them look at different rec centers from around the country to say, hey, look, this is what some of the newer rec centers are bringing forth. Because we can say swimming pool, we can say basketball courts, but some places may have rock climbing. Some other places may have CrossFit type of fields that they have indoor, outdoor. Other facilities that I've seen, like in California and other places, have a two-tier type of rec center that has a walkable track upstairs to where they can walk in the cold, in the rain, in the evening, that's well lit. It also could be something that we could keep open till late hours, till 11 o'clock for those people who get off work and need a place to go and work out, because that's another, one of the residents says, we don't have enough gyms to go by. You know, we don't have enough places for our city, for people to go and exercise in that level. So we're looking at all different age groups. And it would also be good to also hear from our Parks Department to see what kind of activities they would need to utilize if they had a space like this. Is it just basketball courts, or it's other things and so forth? So I think if we give that direction for the city to look at a rec center components, maybe we can have some consultants come back and say, these are what other cities are doing, and this is their cost, and then we can decide if we want to be able to take away the racquetball or add the upper tier track. Do we really need a sauna? Or we already have a swimming pool and the splash pads. Do we need a smaller one also for?
How is a consultant going to help us? Because you just gave $150 million worth of stuff that I want every single one of those things.
Yeah.
But how do we get a consultant? If we tell, all right, go for the next 4 months and study all these other rec centers and libraries and senior centers and bring something back, how are they going to be able to bring that into any kind of clear scope that will be actionable and consistent with what our values are? Because we still haven't, we're still not telling the group what our priorities are.
Because we haven't outlined them. Like, that's why I was thinking, why don't we sit down and each of us puts 4 or 5 things that we want the most, and then take a vote on what are the components we want to see.
So
Yeah,
that-
if we have flexible space,
So,
we can convert that space at any point. So maybe we need basketball courts or racquetball courts, but if we build flexible space, then we can have what we discovered is the most efficient use of that, or needed use of that space. That's a possibility.
Bear, just go. Don't raise your hand.
I don't know how to,
Go.
I forget.
Go.
So just the feasibility study that we participated in over the last couple of months, and this isn't in place of feedback from Parks, I'm just sharing information. The biggest changes in trends are volleyball, or increases, are volleyball, basketball, pickleball, and hockey are the 4, and soccer are the 5 that have seen increases in participation over the last 10 years, with pickleball obviously being the largest because it's most recent surge.
And it's the one that seniors involve themselves in most.
I'm sorry?
Pickleball is one that seniors involve themselves in.
Absolutely. Yeah, you go to the YMCA
Yeah,
any
there's
morning
not
at
so
9
much.
a.m. and you'll see the gym is full of seniors playing pickleball. So I think with the Public Safety Center, we built for the future. We built for future growth. And that needs to be the mindset here. And if we're going to be able to maximize the potential that we have to support the future growth, we can't be doubling up. We can't be doubling up on space that we will that we potentially could have in other parts of this city. Like, we need to, if we're going to talk about the rec center and talk about sports and parks programs, we need to also be talking about the Sportsplex project. And how can the Sportsplex project check some of those boxes so that we have more money and space to allocate to our seniors, to other rec center priorities, like I love darts, even though I'm awful at darts. I think, just like those types of indoor activities, and the library. So we have to really be regimented with how we're going to move this forward. And while I love your idea of laying out what everybody wants, we're probably only going to align as a group on 1 or 2, maybe 3-ish things. And the rest.
But we still need to make a decision.
I agree.
So-
No, I totally agree.
I
but-
don't think we
So-
have to make
so-
a decision whether or not it's
Well-
pickleball or basketball. I think we need to make a decision about, we'll have a recreational component. That's all the bond's gonna hit. And
Yeah.
we got 4 years after the bond to,
Well-
a year at least, to design.
Yeah.
And that, the needs will change. We may realize in 5 years that if we've developed this flexible space, that there's something totally different that we really want.
So I think right now what we need to do is just move forward on a building, look at the square footage we've got, and then start breaking down the components as we go to design, right?
Yes.
So I think that's kind of what we're looking at today is let's build a large building, let's see what dollars we have, and then we'll allocate the space as we see moving forward. One reason why that I don't want to wait any longer is because we've waited long enough for a building like this. And if we go and get a consultant, we're looking at pushing this back. I think the seniors have waited a long time. I think the community's waited a long time. I think it's something we need to start doing in real time. And one reason is that, look, these seats are not guaranteed. I mean, what does the next council come in and do? I mean, I've seen council members come in here and try to kill projects that are underway. So right now, I know that we've got a minimal amount of time that we've got. Right now, we have a dais that's willing to move forward on a building. And I think we really need to do that, is move forward on a building, get it done, and we can talk about the design and everything inside later. But let's get moving on a building. Let's make sure we identify the spot, as Councilmember Tobias said, and let's move forward on this building, and then we can hash out everything else. But let's try to get forward on this, because before you know it, August will be here.
But we will need to have some basic components
some basic-
identified for that building in order to take it to bond,
Correct.
to get the bond passed.
Yeah, and I think we're there.
Thank you. That's exactly the whole point I was trying to make this whole time. See which site would be best suited for any kind of development, where our acreage is, and and where our infrastructure lies. It means that this location will have to build additional easements, okay, and it's gonna run this much. We have the dollar amount, we have the figure already ready to go. Break it down into steps. Same thing with Vista Park. See how much square footage of land we have. And then they said, yeah, we can be able to do this, including an additional outage we can do at the top of the hill. We can be able to design that. Then we can decide on which location we can go with from there. Because we're not even at the concept design. I understand everybody say, well, how much percentage is the seniors gonna get? How much are pickleball spaces? We're not there yet. Because we gotta see what land in what area we can really to build on, and how much square footage of a building we can build on, and then we can go from there.
Well, the amount of land built on is the same, no matter
Okay.
which of those we pick.
But which would be the most feasible as far as the roads and all that?
Michael, I'm warming on the direction in which you're trying to head. I think the flaw that I'm still seeing, though, is that regardless of the location, 100,000 square feet that includes an activity center, or includes a rec center or a basketball court that can convert into a volleyball court, is going to cost a different amount of money than 100,000 square feet of space that doesn't have that and is more walls and not as wide open and requires more building and more materials. So I think the concept does matter. And maybe the direction, Michael, maybe we need to be talking about is what is the max amount of money that we can spend? And then what that money is, and how do we break that down into or how we apply that to our priorities, and then we apply it to which location best suits our ability to maximize the build, the actual design build on that plot of land.
So to that point that he just brought up, which is the maximum amount of money, I feel like we are all capping ourselves to not go over the 59-cent tax increase that we had already discussed. And I don't think that will be the smart thing to do, because that way we are limiting ourselves into the scope of work that this building is going to have. Just like the road bond, right? We didn't do the increase all at once. It's not gonna happen all at once. So I believe that we should set the priorities and get an idea of how much the building will be. And then when we put this for the voters, if it goes over 59 cents, if it goes to 62, 63, I don't know. But we let the voters decide that, because it will not go to that amount right the next year. It will be increased. You know, it will happen increasingly, and we don't even know if we are gonna reach that amount. So
I think we should do an exercise. library, senior center, rec center. Pick number one and number two. Which one do you absolutely have? Which one do you want to have? And which one are you willing to let go? And everybody just write it down so that staff can get feedback, more than just anecdotal, but legitimate feedback on what the priorities are, so that as they start to pursue some scoping from a consultant, they can at least say, the council's 5 out of 6 of them said that the senior center was the most important thing. And 3 out of 6 of them got rid of the library, and 3 out of 6 of them got rid of the rec center.
Do you just want to take a vote?
I would say write it down and then just go 1 to 1.
If you want real responses, it needs to be anonymous, or else you're not.
No, I am totally willing, so you mean that you're gonna hurt somebody?
Bear, you don't like talking in front of people? Come on.
I'm willing.
You've already come after it. I promise I'm giving my honest response.
I don't think
We
we
have-
should be taking anything out. Like, why is that the
It's
mentality?
an
that
it's not about what we're
has to
taking
be
out. It's about showing
Just-
what we are
Just put it as a
prioritizing.
priority, your top three priorities. Because obviously, all of us here, can we all
1, 2, and
agree?
3.
Yeah.
Can we all agree, seniors, can we all agree, rec, can we all agree, library, can we all agree, rec, can we all agree, library, can we all agree, seniors? So it'd be just a matter of taking what will be your top 1, 2, and 3, top 1, 2, and 3, top 1, 2, and 3. And then at least we could see a majority of where we're all at, and it's all out in the open, where the public can see it, and they're more than welcome to email me when they get home. And then at least it gives them a direction from where we're at and going from there. So if you'd like for me to go first,
Let's
I
do
will
it.
go and go. My top 3 would be, of course, seniors, library, and recreation.
Library's number 2?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mine would be the same.
Mine would be seniors, community, and recreation, and then the library.
I'm sorry, hang on. Laura Lee, you said, so the options are seniors, center, library, or rec center? So you're saying the same thing, senior, then
Rec,
library, then
yeah.
rec center?
Senior, rec, then library.
Senior, rec, then library.
Except I'm talking,
You want me to go or
we're
do you want to
talking
go?
community center, that's how we have been advertising it. So with a recreation component, fine.
Recreation center, senior center, library, and children's center. Unless you can give me a library that has a children museum.
DP, say it
component.
again.
Sure.
Rec center, senior center, library, and children's center, unless you give me a library that has a children component museum with it.
Okay, I made my list by allocation of square footage, okay, of the actual space. And I'm folding her kids into library, educational space, and kids. Okay? No, not your children. Jeez. So that would be number 1, library, educational space that serves kids and just
Oh, just
other.
library.
Sure.
Okay.
He doesn't do force rank. He does not play by the rules.
I am.
No,
Number
I understand, so library.
I'm giving
number 1.
context based on a need that she just made up.
So library.
Okay, number 2 would be the rec center. Number 3 would be seniors. That's not to say I don't care about the seniors or want space for the seniors. 100% I do. I'm talking about allocation of square footage. That's all I'm talking about.
He's right.
It's actually ironic because I'm sitting here and now I'm like, well,
thought you knew.
if I was to prioritize based on what I think the voters most want, the rec center would be number 1. So I would agree with Daniela on that. But in terms of what I think is most appropriate, I still think the senior center is the most important. But here's the thing: if we're going all out, senior center's number 1 priority of this 2024 bond, it has to be in covenant with the seniors. We absolutely need the seniors to not be criticizing it all the way up until November, but to be our champions. Because if it fails, then it's just gone, and there's no fallback. Oh, if you kill this vote, then right on the backside of that, we're going to get some standalone senior center. That may be what someone's trying to tell you, but that's just not very likely to happen. So if I say senior center, if we all say senior center is top priority, then we need the seniors to say that the council is championing something for them, because you all do vote, and you all do have extra time to volunteer and help us raise support for a bond. Is that something that y'all would be willing to help us with if we said that the senior center is the number one priority? All right. All right. Well, I'm going senior library and then rec center. So I'm putting rec center number 3, which is what I proposed earlier. And the reason is just because it's such a large cost and it has such a large square footage, and we're building sports plexes. We have potential to build an indoor rec center in partnership with others where we could have basketball and volleyball and who knows what else. You never know what could happen. But what I know there are no plans for, and that if we don't pursue it, will be a senior center. That's the one thing that if we pursue, we're not double dipping, because there's not about to be another senior center on that side. So I would say, so let's see. Of the 6 of us, 4 of us said that the senior center was the most important thing. Half of us said that the library Bear said the library was the most important thing. And then Daniela said the rec center was the most important thing.
It just doesn't have to be exclusive, like all needs to be together. I don't think that there is an option for us not to consider having it all.
What do you think the max number we can ask the voters to approve
I
is?
think we should be heading to $115 million and then going for whatever number that looks like. Now I'm gonna look at Perez, but that's not going to be an increase that will happen right away. That's why I'm trying to prioritize things that, to me, the number 1 in the list is gonna be something that is gonna be used by every resident in Kyle. The seniors will be used in the rec center too. I mean, if we have like aquatics involved, I'm sure that they would love to join any aquatic programs that we have in the rec center component. Also, if we have like exercises geared towards seniors, they will be used in that, as well as their separate space with kitchen, which is what they really want and need. So it's not something exclusive. I think we shouldn't be limiting ourselves on the scope of this building.
It's great to throw up numbers, but we gotta ask the expert if we can.
Exactly. I'm just throwing a number.
So here's what I'm gonna say. Listen to me, please. Perez, what is our bond rating at? This is a person we need to be talking about. Can we go above the 59%? And will that hurt our bond rating in any way or capacity?
That's true, because we would have to borrow. That is why we got to get the numbers. Got to get the numbers.
Welcome to the party, Perez.
So for the record, I'm Pervez Mohi, City's Director of Finance. The city manager has scheduled a session on May 7th with the city's financial advisor that will be talking about tax rates and the impact of the road bonds and anything else council would like to discuss that day. So that's coming up. And I think that question really needs to be addressed by the city's financial advisor about the market conditions and our impact on the ratings. Our current rating, as we speak, is AA- by Standard & Poor's. So I don't know, Mayor Pro Tem, if that answers your question.
What was our rating before the last bond?
It was AA-, so it was reaffirmed after the bond
Okay,
election.
sounds good. Okay, that's kind of what I'm looking at is, do we have the capacity to bond? If we do decide to bond, but that'll be answered on the 7th, and making sure we don't hurt our bond rating, because the bond rating is important because it helps us set the price on what we're going to be paying back. So it's important to know these numbers and moving forward if we're going to be able to do the increase. Right now, doing the increase of 59 probably wouldn't hurt us, but anything above could have an impact, but we won't know that until after that meeting. So thank you,
Yes, sir.
Perez.
Thank you. That's exactly what we needed to hear. Exactly, because we got to see where our money is, ladies and gentlemen. I know we want these things, trust me, I know. But we all are going to be paying the taxes on it. You got to understand that. We're all going to be paying the taxes on it if we have to go up. So you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared if we have to go that route, that there would be a tax increase. We have lots of visions, lots of wants, lots of needs, but we also have bills to pay at the end of the month here in our city. And that would also affect any kind of borrowing we need for future use, correct? Thank you.
So after this, say you move forward with the idea that the one thing, next steps.
Jesse said he had great direction.
Well, I think you want to move forward for a bond election. There's some degree of uncertainty about what the overall rate is, but we can figure that out a little bit later. I think it's clear senior center and library space is the preferred, at least the force ranking. Those are the things that you're looking for the most out of the facility. We're looking at 2 locations. We'll come back with some engineering analysis for both those locations, show you the access, kind of what would be required, where's the water, where's the wastewater, how those things work, be able to give you some information to help you make a decision ultimately of where you'd want to put that. I think that's what we were looking for today, is to have that kind of discussion to clarify that. Frankly, if you weren't interested in having any kind of joint space or having an election, well, then it's a different question, and we wanted to get that answered very clearly, and you've done that for us today. I think we have a lot of work to do for you in terms of what the space would look like, how would it work, what are the shared use, this auditorium space, kitchens, all those things are things we need to come back and give you a lot more specificity on that and give you options so that we can start refining this so that when we go to the voters in November, you'll have a clear rendering, a site, clear expectations of what's going to get built, what the financial impact of that, all those things are. So that's what we'll be working you through over the next few months and showing you all those things. But that's, as I've understood it, that's the direction I got from the council today. And if I've misstated anything or you guys want us to do anything different, please correct me so we can make sure we can bring you things over the next few weeks and months that will start fulfilling that mission.
2 things. First, can that meeting with the financial advisor happen sooner than 6 weeks from now?
Well, it can. We can come back to you and tell you what our bond capacity is. The problem is we won't know our appraised values until probably late April. April 30th. So you don't know what those appraised values are going to be. That's the reason for the date. I can certainly come back to you and say, what do we think we could do? What would it impact the bond, the tax rate based on an estimate? But that's the reason we've tried to do it.
Okay. And what was the second thing? Okay. With all the different priorities that are in our minds that don't like fall, that aren't as like big as senior center, library, rec center, like there's amenities that fall within those. You know, like she wants to have dedicated areas for kids, like that could fall into one of those areas. You know, like on the community surveys, there's those word clouds that kind of show the residents list the things that are the most important to them. I think that'd be an interesting exercise for you all to give, for us to give back to you, so that you can take some of those smaller words that are viable, like a you know. I was thinking of like educational areas where classes could be taught. You know, that's not necessarily going to be its own thing,
Right.
but it can fall under the umbrella of one of the other areas. So when I was talking about the seniors before in terms of being number 3 of 3 in terms of square footage allocation, I see a lot of the things, the dedicated space that they need is going to be the kitchen and some other, you know, smaller meeting room areas for events. Like this is where we're going to need to find some of those uses that can be allocated into other areas so that we can maximize the space for the dollars that we do have that we'll eventually find out about. But we need to try to streamline this effort, or we're never going to get to a point where we can put something up for bond. I don't see how we can do that, especially if we have to wait till middle of April to have a clear picture, is if we can even afford to do something, which I believe we can, but.
What do y'all think about something like a 500-seat auditorium as being an element that they have to incorporate into the plans?
Does the
the only thing we have is sit back, right?
This is this is the biggest city meeting space that we own, right here.
We don't have the pack anymore.
So, but that's the thing. Everything's about priority, because that's something we don't have. But if we prioritize a large gathering space that many groups could use, but that the city would functionally have, then, you know, it comes at a cost.
If that space could be more flexible, it would help.
So here's the trade-off to flexible space. You start talking about, all right, well, let's make it flexible. Then it's like, all right, well, let's make it just be like a gym with a
Yeah,
stage.
it's not as
and
nice.
Right. It's like, you know, do you drive a sports car? Do you drive something that, you know, it's like, what are you after? And the more modular you make something, the less signature it becomes.
You know, there's a lot of groups that will use a smaller space. They won't use 500 seat space.
I think the city can produce.
You know, we don't have any.
I think we could pack it out if we had 500 seats, a few times a year at least.
A few times a year, yeah. But this is not a convention center.
It's not a convention center. That's also true. It's like, it's really hard not to want to put
community
everything
center.
into one thing.
Yeah.
So, and we are pursuing a hotel convention center deal, but I've been pursuing that for 5 years, and we're still about the same distance away from it.
I would go with that. The reason why is because we could also do trade-offs, and again, with my speech that I did earlier, you can work with area businesses. You can have trade shows there. You can have job fairs there. You can also rent it out if you need to bring some of that money back in.
But an auditorium, I think of is being more like where you have recessed, you know, seating and an actual stage, like the Performing Arts Center. But a modular space is more for like luncheons and partitions, where you actually have an elevated stage, so maybe that you roll in and can roll out.
We could use that for entertainment purposes as well. If there was ever something that we needed to do, our performances, like we do with the Martin Luther King Day celebrations, or we also do like the Juneteenth celebrations, something like that, where it's used as a facility. Every month we could use it for something to pack in the people. Even if it has to do with the small graduation ceremony for something. You got to look beyond that and say, what could we use that for that area with? State of the City is a perfect example.
The modular versus
on that end.
You know, it's like if you're thinking of like we want it to be truly a presentation space for the dramatic arts and for presenting, you want it to look like the PAC with dedicated lights and a stage and all the various elements. But if you're wanting to be able to have luncheons and graduations and a variety of things, then you want it all flat with the ability to partition out and modular. But I don't know the answer, but I guess we don't have to decide that now.
Brian, do you have marching? Do you understand your assignment for moving forward? I hope so we can move on to number two.
I at least have
No, we're done. So let's land this plane as best as we possibly can to give the best feedback, and we'll talk downtown later.
Yeah, I think I've got good direction of the things you want to start looking at. I think some of these exact answers of how things will look and what kind of auditorium and what kind of space, that will come a little later. But I think we've got a good idea where you want to go.
So your intention is to go and engage someone else? Do we want a task force? Do we want a review panel to actually interview these folks? Or are we just going to let staff just do it?
Well, let me just say, to make the deadline, we will not be able to do an RFQ process for this. We will need to look at a few firms and bring you back a recommendation and ask you to vote on that contract. There's a professional service that's allowed by state statute to do that, but we don't have 3 months to pick a firm. So we'll bring you back something quickly. That'd be our recommendation to you. If the council wants to have a task force, that's certainly your prerogative, but it won't be a typical RFQ process.
Well, but if you go out for a professional services agreement, you're still going to interview firms, aren't you?
I'll talk to 2 or 3 firms that I think have been very successful about building some of these facilities around the state and talk to them that I think are the leading firms, see who's available to do the work. One of the questions is, could they turn it around and be back to us with a scope of work and a contract within 30 days or so and be ready to get started? Some of them may not be ready. So I'd have to look at doing some of that kind of legwork before I could even bring you a recommendation.
Just a general thought, last thing I'm probably going to say. we cannot allow the school district to bond out again before we get something on the ballot. Why? Who cares? There's priority for us. We can't be, and I've said this to every single one of you since I've known you, that if we continue to allow our tax dollars and bond dollars to be spent by other entities, it only makes our ability to support the growth more difficult. With every passing dollar that's bonded out by another jurisdiction, it only makes our job more difficult.
Well, that's up to
Yes,
the.
it can. We have the ability to control
that's
getting
up to the-
something on the ballot in November, which they will
that's-
not, so.
That's up to the voters. So right now, we're talking about a building. Let's talk about the building.
Well, I believe that we've all expressed our intentions to call a bond in August for a November election. We'll be competing with the county, who's going to be going for a county-wide road bond, of which several projects will directly impact the city of Kyle. So it's like, we don't necessarily want to cannibalize other jurisdictions' ability to bond, because oftentimes what they're doing has a benefit to us as well. But all of that said, does the council want to be involved in the selection process, or do we want to have staff bring it back? I believe, to be clear, that we can choose either of those paths and hit the exact same deadlines through a professional services agreement. But do y'all want to be involved in talking to some of these firms before the recommendation is made? Daniela said yes.
Yes.
Is there others who want to be involved in the process?
I've been involved in the last two bonds and the process, so I'm familiar with it. If council would like for me to be on it, I'll be on it. I'll definitely participate. If council has a different desire, I'm good with that too. Whatever y'all want to do, I'll leave it up to y'all.
So designing a task force is what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying let's take it in bite-sized pieces. The first thing that's coming back is a professional services agreement with the firm to start developing scope and budget work for us. Do we want to have council members involved? And you have to keep in mind that what we're trying to do is bring the will of council to bear, not individual members. That's the most important part of a task force. It's not like, oh, I'm on a task force, therefore my opinions matter.
No.
It's I'm on a task force and my job is to bring the will of council to bear so that we don't get far down the road and then realize that we've made a mistake. It also has an accountability.
We're just talking about hiring a firm
Yes.
to get us started.
Just picking some folks that
Just-
Brian can be like, these are the people who are gonna.
In my
talk.
opinion, he knows better than I do.
I think it's both. I think staff.
Well, I mean, he knows
has-
what we need.
Yes, but it's still, he doesn't know what the community wants better than you.
Oh, that's
You know
true.
what I mean? So that you put.
But we're
put
just
the-
talking about
put those
hiring a
together.
firm.
Right.
But then after that, the task force would start, or both. I guess I'm confused.
You would have to have members of council involved in that process of, this is the vision of council to the firms, and then we can decide then which the firm is going to see where we're at. We then can vote on which firm to go with. Because he's gonna bring us maybe 2 or 3, right? For all you know, it could be 4 or 5, or it could just be 1.
Yeah.
And then we have councils, we have leadership from the council to say, this is where we're at, this is what we've talked about. And then that firm can kind of break it down and see where we're at, and then if there's 2 or 3 options, correct?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Is
I did want to clarify too. From the staff, we're happy to do it any way you want to, first of all. But this is not to do a final design for the facility.
No.
This is not to select
I
who is
think we've
designing
given
it.
adequate
But
direction.
this is to give us a basic idea of how it would work, some conceptual layouts, those kinds of things. You could use the same firm if the voters approve the project to finally design it. That's certainly something you could do, or you could pick another firm. Those are all options that you can look at. But we've got to have enough level of detail that you know what you're getting, the voters know what they're voting on. That's what we're trying to do here, not a final design. So I just throw that out for your discussion is if you want to have council members form a task force, we'll bring those, a few recommendations. We could have that discussion with them and bring you back. But the council itself is going to approve the contract. It's going to require a vote of the council.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about the the last several times we've tried to do a downtown plan of some kind. And most recently, we had staff go and be very smart and astute and bring about some options for some downtown projects that we're not going to talk about, but maybe down the road. And we were all like, this is not coming from us. This is not, it wasn't organic. It felt like something coming to us that we had to, and then we really got off track. It really was just, we gave our feedback when we had the time to give our feedback, and that was, but it was cart before the ox. So what I'm trying to say is, like, if we have, what?
Nothing.
If we have the opportunity to weigh in right now, it helps us to get grounded to this project so that as we're carrying it forward, we know who's ultimately responsible. No scenario where we're like, staff screwed up. It's on us to bring this forward.
For us to stay on this deadline, there will need to be checkpoints between staff and whoever in a group that is going to represent council along the way, or else we're never going to stay on deadline for the already tight deadlines that we have. So, Michael, are you?
Yep.
Do you want to be on it?
Yes, sir. I'll
I'd like
be
to be on it.
interested in
Daniela?
helping with that.
And one more,
Yeah.
Laura Lee.
There we go.
Where's-
There you go.
Oh, Laura Lee, you're gonna be on? Okay, sounds good. All right,
Or
I'll
all
step
of us
back.
could be the task force.
I'll step back.
Well, it's just,
Do we need
it's
to make a
really just
motion?
we'll call it a task force because we actually have a policy on it. So, but it's not an RFQ. It's not, you are the community center task
No.
force. It's you're helping Brian bring forward a firm that we can hire immediately. So you're asking the questions too. You're hearing, can you get this done? So that they have some accountability more than just to the city manager. They're gonna have accountability to you to hit these deadlines. And I think that's good.
Yeah, so the goal would be to have something to you on the second, at least as a decision point, so that's next week. We need to make a decision, how we're gonna do that. And so if whoever wants to be on that group, we can do that. We can also then, if you want to actually form a task force, we would need to have an item on the second for you to do that per your policy. And we can make all those things happen, but the time is running short. And we'll need to move very quickly.
Will these meetings happen during the day, or is it gonna be something you're gonna go through email, or?
Both, both, and I'll meet you anytime, anywhere. We'll do
So
it
they'll
anytime
have-
you're available.
Their schedules have to be flexible, correct?
For the firms or
No,
the
for
members?
the council members.
Yes, I mean, as long as they have some time to meet,
I know that Michael
during the
and
next
I
few
have-
weeks, then we have the time to do that.
We have jobs,
I'll
however,
I'll work around your job.
We are,
Okay.
thank
If
you.
And that's what my question was.
Time anywhere.
If you could work around their jobs, because I know they both have daytime jobs, that's what I was going with that. Just making sure we were able to do that. That'd
And
be
like
great.
what Brian says, even if it's 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever it is, whatever it takes, I'm sure that all three of us can agree. we can
Honestly,
meet.
I think we probably just need 1 or 2 meetings with you. We could
Yeah.
say, here are the firms that we've identified, unless you have others. Here's what we like, what we don't like, what we'd recommend, what do you think? And then see what you kind of want to do from there.
Good.
And I think if there's a firm that you're interested in particular, maybe Brian says, this is the one, I think it would be good for y'all to talk to them. Ask them the questions. Can you do this? Can you deliver? What's your experience? Not let it be but get it out of them and find out whether they're serious. Because when we did Heroes Memorial Park versus La Verde, on paper, they both looked the same. But in deliverance, they were the opposite ends of the spectrum. So it's your job to figure that out, and it's not easy.
No, it's not.
Until you get started, you don't know.
And just to be fair, the firm that we picked for La Verde actually was doing really good. Unfortunately, the owner passed away, and the people under him weren't able to carry out the mission as efficiently as he was. But the original firm that applied would have been a great firm. Unfortunately, when the owner passed away, it changed the dynamics of that whole company. So, but it's doing the due diligence. It's making sure that you look at past projects, ask questions of what they've done, and look at past projects that they've done, what their timelines, did they meet those timelines? It's going to be on that basis. And I'm just sharing some experience from the last two that I've been, actually 4 or 5 now. I don't know, it's been a bunch of them now that I've been a part of. So this is great experience. I'm really excited that y'all are wanting to do this because I think it's experience that every council member should have. So good luck, all right?
All right. I was thinking we would have the downtown discussion later, so it's,
Can we postpone that, please?
yeah.
Absolutely. For clarification, Laura Lee and Daniela are the two?
And
Tobias.
Michael.
And Tobias, the three of you? Okay, thank you.
And we can, the April 2nd thing, we could actually have an official task force for the community center. That would be for the duration of the project. So there's a lot. That would be once we pick someone to design, and a lot of the actual regular meetings are going to be after the election. Because and I think this is important to say for everyone, the big difference between the Public Safety Center and this community center is that on the Public Safety Center, we front-loaded it. We spent $1.5 million on designs and plans. I mean, we had it buttoned down. We got a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price contract, which is what we then took to the voters. So we were heavily invested, and if the voters had said no, we would have been at risk. This proposal, the way we're pursuing this, is we're going with some schematic, some scope, some renderings, a general idea. Then we ask the voters, and if the voters say yes, then we'll start the design, which means that in November of 2020, we passed the Public Safety Center bond. We broke ground in February, 3 months later, the following year. But that's because we front-loaded it. So this is a completely different strategy, and I hope people would understand that we're not measuring ourselves against the way we were doing it with the Public Safety Center. It's a different risk profile. I think it would be irresponsible of us to spend $1.5 million on plans without approval of the voters, because this is in the category of want, not need. So there's not gonna be a lot to do between now and November, but the selection of this firm is one of those things. Do y'all want us to give you action on that?
No, sir. I think I've got what I need for that. I'll bring you back an item on the second, and then we'll set up a meeting with the three of the council members.
Parting words, final comments?
Yeah, just real quick, I want to thank staff for being here on a Saturday morning. Thank y'all very much. Appreciate y'all's dedication, y'all's time. I want to thank my fellow council members as well. And the community came out, took time out of their busy schedules to come out here. It's always important to hear everybody in the community. And I want to thank our mayor for leading us this morning. It's early in the morning. I know we're not morning people, but yeah, I think we've had a great discussion. I want to commend everybody on being so civil and very engaging. It was a really great meeting. Felt like we did a lot today.
Motion to adjourn. All right, we're adjourned. Thank y'all.